Chapter 2364, A Unique Power. Chapter 2364, A Unique Power. Fuck, so serious. Ling Han grimaced and said, Senior, this junior has just advanced to the ascending origin tier, and has very fragile shoulders still. I fear I cannot shoulder such heavy responsibility. Heavenly Venerate, Wu Lu shook his head. Young man, you still do not know the seriousness of this matter. He sighed and continued, over a dozen epochs ago, the foreign realm invaded, and Ju Wu, Sealed Emotion, Green Flames, and I worked together to battle the foreign realm Heavenly Venerates. But close to the end, those three selfish guys were actually persuaded by the beings of the foreign realm, and joined an alliance with the foreign realm for the sake of transcendence. What is transcendence? Ling Han was curious. Wu Lu was speechless. What time was it now? And what this brat was concerned about was actually such trivial matters. However, looking at the curious expression on Ling Han's face, he knew that it was best for him to satisfy this guy's curiosity first. Otherwise, the latter would be completely absent-minded. Firstly, do you know how Heavenly Venerate tier surpasses regulations? He asked instead. This question was huge, and probably only those rare few people in this entire world could actually answer this question. However, Ling Han was precisely one of them, because he had once been the overlord of a realm, and had also obtained Wally's models and formulae. He knew how to extract the power of heaven and earth. By extracting the essence power of heaven and earth to nurture oneself, and turning it into the source of motivation instead of drawing on regulations, Ling Han answered. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu appeared, slightly surprised. Though he had asked this question, he had not thought a mere ascending origin tier would be capable of answering. He faltered slightly, and only then continued, Though your understanding cannot be considered completely correct, it is not too far off, either. However, every realm would have a unique power. This is the precondition for the emergence of a realm, and for a Heavenly Venerate to ascend Tao, what they could grasp would definitely be this kind of unique power. Once they leave this realm, their power will slowly dry up, and they will leap down from the Heavenly Venerate tier. Ling Han was surprised. Wally had not mentioned this to him before. He nodded. This is just like how an ordinary person whose body would slowly weaken when he has lost the replenishment of energy through food. This is a very realistic analogy. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu nodded. However, Heavenly Venerate tier is too strong. This process would be endlessly long, but no matter how long it is, as long as he still relies on this kind of power, it is inevitable. Heavenly Venerate tier is like a tree which still needs to be rooted in its own realm, and they are closely linked. Ling Han was confused and asked, Since that is the case, shouldn't Jiwu Heavenly Venerate and the others have a larger reason to protect the celestial realm? If the celestial realm was destroyed, the unique power of the celestial realm would disappear. How would the Jiwu Heavenly Venerate, Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerate, and Green Flames Heavenly Venerate continue to rule the world? Though Heavenly Venerate tier is synonym for the strongest, there are actually still differences in strength and level among Heavenly Venerates. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu said slowly. Ling Han knew this because the vitality index of a Heavenly Venerate should be 15,000 points, but Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity was close to 16,000 points, which even Wally thought was terrifying. Dare I ask, Senior, how many levels are there in Heavenly Venerate tier? He asked. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu shook his head. I don't know either. Ling Han couldn't help but feel speechless, thinking that this Heavenly Venerate was really quite humorous. I have only ventured to the two realms of Celestial Realm and Foreign Realm, but as far as I know, there are a great many other realms, which contain countless powerful beings, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu said. Next, these are all my deductions. Grasping the unique power of a realm should be the first step for a Heavenly Venerate. But aside from this kind of power, there are still other powers in the realm, and this is what makes up the foundations of the entire realm. That unique power can only be considered the unique trait of a realm. Further, grasping another basic power should be the second tier of a heavenly venerate. And once they took this second step, a heavenly venerate would be able to truly transcend, no longer trapped in their own realm, and could be powerful and lofty in any other realm as well. Ling Han nodded. Aside from that unique power, other powers would be universal. Then, it was natural that they would extract the power of heaven and earth of any realm they ventured to. There was no need to worry that they would dry up one day. The agreement that Jiwu and the others reached with the foreign realm is that when the celestial realm is devoured, the heavenly venerates will be able to extract the core power of the celestial realm together. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu explained. There are only two methods to absorb this kind of power. Firstly, when the realm first comes into being, and everything is still in its beginning state, these powers would be exposed. However, when a realm first comes into being, there is no living being that can reach the height of Heavenly Venerate tier, so it naturally could not be done. Secondly, when a realm is destroyed. Ling Han's body shook, and he asked, those three Heavenly Venerates would destroy the entire celestial realm for the sake of their own transcendence. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu sighed. Previously, it was because of this that we split ways. People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. It was not just him. There was also the karmic life Heavenly Venerate who came later. He had also met the incoming invasion of the foreign realm Heavenly Venerates on his own, and in the end had no choice but to fuse himself with Heavenly Tao, damaging the connecting point of the two realms. Otherwise, the celestial realm probably would have long since ceased existing. A thought sparked in Ling Han's mind. Then now, if the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity takes another step further, he would become a second-tier Heavenly Venerate? The old geezer's vitality index was close to 16,000 points, and once he reached that, wouldn't he then become a second-tier Heavenly Venerate? Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu shook his head. That is impossible, but if he refined me completely, he would be able to obtain the unique power of the celestial realm, and would then be able to penetrate deeply into the celestial realm, committing mass slaughter. The strength of a realm was not based on one or two elites, but rather countless living beings. If the foreign realm wanted to devour the celestial realm, it was very simple to accomplish, and that was by eliminating a great majority of the living creatures there. In that case, the heaven and earth would be severely damaged and would become incredibly weak, and thus easily devoured and fused. If the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity was no longer restrained by the power of heaven and earth of the celestial realm, at least not so seriously, would be able to commit mass slaughter. In any case, those three Heavenly Venerates of the celestial realm would not move to stop him. He alone could kill most beings of the celestial realm. By then, it would be doomsday for the celestial realm. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had said that it was a very serious matter. Clearly, he had not been deliberately exaggerating. Yet Ling Han was stunned as he asked, Senior, you wish to be refined by the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity? Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu nodded. In the past, I faced off against multiple enemies all on my own, shattering the connecting point of the two realms, even if it meant my death. I have indeed succeeded, but I am also severely wounded, and was thus captured by the foreign realm. Desolate Eternity is one of the most powerful even among the Heavenly Venerates of the foreign realm. He has great ambitions and superior intelligence. He wants to refine me to gain the power of heaven and earth within me. If he succeeds, he will be able to cultivate the first tier to the consummate level, and will no longer fear the restrictions of the celestial realm. Ling Han nodded. Having grasped that unique power of the celestial realm, the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity would be equivalent to a being of the celestial realm himself. Though a Heavenly Venerate would still be targeted by the heaven and earth, the situation would be completely different from having a foreign realm Heavenly Venerate invade. Being capable of becoming a Heavenly Venerate, which of us is not a supreme prodigy, a supreme elite? Desolate Eternity wishes to refine me, and this is a double-edged sword. It is also possible that I could turn the tables on him and refine him instead. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu said. But with the restraints of this realm, I can just barely preserve myself and prevent desolate eternity from succeeding. However, after resisting for so long, my power is already becoming weaker and weaker, and I am close to losing out. It was because Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had only walked the first step. After leaving the celestial realm, he was no longer able to extract the unique power, and it was certain that he would become increasingly weaker, especially when he still had to contend with an elite like Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity. Chapter 2365 I Am. Chapter 2365 I Am. It could be said that it was already a miracle itself that Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had been able to last so long. It had already been over a dozen epochs. Ling Han was incredibly impressed and bowed towards Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. Senior is virtuous and honorable. This junior is impressed. If Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had not made sacrifices over a dozen epochs ago, would he still have existed? To say nothing of him, even the karmic life Heavenly Venerable could not have possibly appeared, either. History would have long since been rewritten. Yet Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's demeanor was solemn. I can't last for much longer, so you must return to the celestial realm at the first opportunity, and ask a ninth heaven celestial king to interfere and disturb desolate eternity. Adding cooperation from my side, we will definitely be able to ruin his plans. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. This junior cannot return to the celestial realm, because an energy storm has presently filled the connecting point of the two realms. What? Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu couldn't help but exclaim. Ling Han added some details to how he had fled from the celestial realm. Previously, he had only mentioned that he had been forced to flee, but had not described how he had fled. The Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu could not speak. Ling Han was merely at the ascending origin tier. Even if Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity was caught completely off guard, Ling Han could not possibly get within 300 meters of him. He would be destroyed by the might of Heavenly Venerable Tier long before that. Could it be that this was the only outcome? He was merely a spiritual mark and did not have any power at all. Furthermore, he had just barely extracted this spiritual mark while he was clashing with the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity with his full efforts. Moreover, he could only manifest occasionally for just a short while. He just happened to catch sight of how Ling Han kidnapped the human slaves and had thus become curious about him. He observed attentively, and when he discovered Ling Han's similar actions a second time, he took the risk to appear and test the waters. If this matter was known to the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu would definitely be suppressed even harsher, and it would not be possible any longer for him to send out a sliver of divine sense. Yet Ling Han could not return to the celestial realm, and this sliver of divine sense of Wu Lu had no battle prowess at all. Then, weren't they completely helpless? Even if he was a Heavenly Venerate, he couldn't help but feel hopeless. Ling Han gritted his teeth. I may have a way. He decided to go all out and use the final bit of power of the Black Tower. Otherwise, if the celestial realm was destroyed, he and the women would only be islands without roots, completely left without anyone to rely on. When he thought he had ruined the plans of Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity, the old geezer turned out to be using a smokescreen. He talked about how he was researching a way to make it so that beings of the foreign realm needed not fear being targeted by the power of heaven and earth of the celestial realm, but was actually only referring to himself. Once he succeeded, he would only enter the celestial realm alone, and he would definitely obtain profits that the other Heavenly Venerates wouldn't even be able to dream of. Ling Han was certain that all the Heavenly Venerates were united on the matter of invading the celestial realm, but to say that they were all close and intimate friends, Ling Han would never believe that. This was practically a humongous joke. There were greater things at stake, and Ling Han had made his decision, which could not be wavered. You, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu shook his head. He was not underestimating Ling Han, But what could a mere ascending origin tier do? I have a precious, heavenly venerable tier tool, and when I activate it, I can unleash pseudo-heavenly venerable tier battle prowess. Ling Han revealed his trump card. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu couldn't help but feel surprised. You actually have such good fortune, brat. The precious tool of a Heavenly Venerate plus the divine demon sword that was still at the level of a celestial tool. Who knew they might become two precious, heavenly venerable tier tools in the future? He began pondering, and he finally nodded after a while. This could be possible. We have to plan carefully. The senior and junior did not immediately begin, because the divine sense of the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu could not manifest for too long. If the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity discovered that the other party still had the slightest sliver of mobility, their plans would all come to nothing. And Ling Han could not stay here too long, either. The matter of great number of humans once again disappearing would be exposed soon, and he had to quickly return to his quarters. However, he now knew that the absence of these humans could not cause any problem to the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity. He was only using these humans as a cover whose purpose was to conceal the existence of Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. When Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had been severely wounded, it had to be that his body just happened to be refined by Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity, and it was not known to the other foreign realm Heavenly Venerates. Otherwise, a Heavenly Venerate corpse would definitely be scrambled over madly by the Heavenly Venerates. Even if Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity was even stronger, he would only be able to obtain just that slight bit more, obtaining a leg, an arm, or something of the sort. Ling Han returned to his quarters, and did not inform the three women of this matter so that they would not worry. He only told them to make preparations as they would be leaving here at any time. Of course, there was also Wally. The knowledge that this guy possessed was really too useful. A great number of human slaves had once again disappeared. Divine, Desolate Mountain naturally exploded at this. What brazen criminal actually dared to wreak havoc twice on Divine, Desolate Mountain? The two ancestral kings searched high and low, and even all the disciples of the Heavenly Venerate could not escape from suspicion. They were requested to hand over their spatial god tools for inspection. However, Ling Han had the Black Tower, and as long as they were not Heavenly Venerates, no one could tell it was there. He easily passed the inspection. Now, the whole Divine Desolate Mountain had entered once more into a state of vigilance. Both ancestral kings felt vexed, and even had plans to request the return of several senior brothers at the 18th Lotus to investigate this matter. Ling Han's heart was calm. In any case, he would not be able to stay for much longer here, and once he used the great burst of the Black Tower, he would definitely kill several foreign realm monarch stars while he was at it, such as Shuige. The latter had devoured a human right in front of him, and Ling Han's killing intent blazed at this. Another dozen-plus days later, the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu finally manifested once more and discussed the plan with Ling Han. It was mainly him talking and organizing the details of Ling Han's actions and where he would go after he succeeded. Ling Han planned to go to the Dark Inverse Realm because there was no way back. However, the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu shook his head. I am already at the end of my line, and after I escape, I will deliver you back to the Celestial Realm. Though the energy storm will cause severe injury to me, I no longer care. Senior, Ling Han was moved. Seeing Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's actions, the latter planned to follow in the steps of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, and fuse himself with Heavenly Tao to damage the connecting point of the two realms, giving more time to the Celestial Realm. No need to say further. I have decided, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu declared resolutely. Ling Han could only respectfully bow towards him. The Heavenly Venerates of the older generation did not just consist of selfish people like Ju Heavenly Venerate and Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable. There were also greatly honorable and virtuous beings like Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu and the Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable. Brat, you are able to. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu looked at Ling Han smilingly. He had a very high opinion of Ling Han, who had been able to escape into the foreign realm all alone, and still managed to live so well. How many could do the same? The two appreciated each other's talent, though the difference in their cultivation levels was like the gap between heaven and earth, and the same applied to their age. They became firm comrades because they held the same faith. After going through all the details, Ling Han made his final preparations and drew the three women and little Terror back into the Black Tower, while also having Wally turn into an ornament that hung from his robes. He prepared to act tomorrow night. Day and night existed on Divine Desolate Mountain, but daytime lasted as long as 3 days, while night only lasted 1 night, i.e., had normal length. This was the power of a heavenly venerable tier. A day passed very quickly, and Ling Han moved out. This time, he made no attempts to hide himself. Who knew what corner the sliver of divine sense of the heavenly venerate desolate eternity was roaming around now? Furthermore, his true self was presently working hard to refine the heavenly venerate Wu Lu. He was definitely paying no attention to outside matters. The rest were all mediocre, and he could suppress all of them by simply using the power of the Black Tower. Bah! What are you doing outside at such a late hour? An angry rebuke rang out, and Feng Hailwan appeared. He looked coldly at Ling Han. Could it be that you are that great thief? The latter's words were naturally his deliberate attempt to smear Ling Han's name. Ling Han grinned. That's right, I am. Chapter 2366 True Face. Chapter 2366 True Face. Feng Hailwan fatlered slightly. He had not expected that Ling Han would admit it. He humphed and said, "This matter involves the honor of our master, yet you are still all smiles about it. You do not take the pride of the line of desolate eternity seriously at all. I will definitely report this to our 2 senior brothers." He did not believe that Ling Han was that great kidnapper at all, because doing that did not offer the slightest benefit for Ling Han. Ling Han rubbed his chin and smilingly asked, "Why is it that no one ever believes me when I speak the truth? All right then, how about this?" He revealed his true face. Why were you? Feng Hailwan's emotions fluctuated greatly. You are that human. A great many heavenly venerates had issued an arrest warrant for Ling Han together. This had shaken the entire foreign realm. But no matter how hard they searched high and low, they could not find Ling Han at all. But who would have imagined that this guy would be incredibly high profile and actually scramble his way into the territory of a heavenly venerate? You are too outrageously bold. Feng Hailwan called out loudly. Now he truly believed that Ling Han was that great thief behind the kidnappings. Am I? Ling Han laughed, but he was already charging towards Feng Hailwan in a single move. Boom, he shot out a fist, and it was like the mountain itself was crumbling. How could Feng Hailwan possibly dare to take this head-on? In the past, he had been no match for Ling Han, and now that Ling Han had advanced a step further, he naturally was even less of a match for him. He hurriedly released a battle cry, launching a signal for help. Ling Han moved widely and boldly, already using fists of fury, as his frightening physical power surged out. Something that surpassed regulations was showing its might. Though it was just a tiny bit, it was enough to push his destructive power to a higher level. It was only a few strikes, and Feng Hailwan was already in dire straits. He had no choice but to ignite his blood essence, or he could possibly die at any time. He was stunned, furious, and afraid all at the same time. This was Divine Desolate Mountain, the place of enlightenment of a heavenly venerate, yet a puny human was committing a crime here. Even if Ling Han was torn to pieces, so what? This would be an eternal shame for the line of desolate eternity. Xiao! 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 Someone was already shooting over. It was Si Huangyin. He saw how Feng Hailwan was presently battling with Ling Han, and couldn't help but be dumbfounded. How could there be a human here? Could it be this was one of those slaves previously? This was not impossible, though his memory was extraordinarily good. What need did he have to remember the faces of these lowly slaves? "Help me now!" Feng Hailwan called out loudly. His wings were already wilted. In a short few inches' time, he had already aged several decades. Multiple wrinkles had already appeared on his initially clear and fair forehead. Though competition existed among the line of desolate eternity, this was now an enemy invading from outside. Si Huang Yin did not dare to just stand by. Otherwise, if the matter was investigated afterwards, his crime would really be too heavy. "Who is he?" Si Huang Yin asked in shock as he joined the battle. How could an indescribably powerful human appear here? "Bah!" Feng Hailwan said through gritted teeth. "What?" Si Huang Yin was greatly shocked. This guy was really outrageously bold. As a mere human, he actually dared to come and become a disciple at the place of enlightenment of a heavenly venerate. And what was more important, he actually managed to deceive a heavenly venerate, though the latter was only a sliver of divine sense. What, this trash is Ba? An elite arrived. This time it was Shuigo. He looked at Ling Han, the killing intent in his eyes blazing. He finally understood why Ling Han had slapped him in the face repeatedly for no reason. As it turned out, he was human, so he naturally could not bear to see him devour his fellow men. Ha 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 ha. He suddenly laughed loudly, filled with cruelty. It was great now. He could get his revenge to his heart's content. "I will devour your brain tissue." This man's name is Ling Han, the person that various heavenly venerates are hunting down. Zi Shuang appeared, with her eyes sweeping over Ling Han, filled with surprise. Initially, she had wanted to form an alliance with Ling Han, and now that she had seen Ling Han reveal his real face, she was naturally exploding with shock. When these worlds fell, both Si Huangyin and Shuigo frowned. They had not anticipated that Ling Han would be so strong that a considerable number of heavenly venerates had kept him in mind. "Capture him to wipe off the shame of our line of desolate eternity." Shuigo shouted loudly, joining the battle as well. Ling Han grinned, but his eyes were menacing as he asked, "All of you have come to your deaths. You are only a human." Shuigo smirked coldly. He burst out with the power unique to his race. A boundless bloody light spread out, and regulations of darkness extended, filled with the reek of slaughter and bloodshed. Invincible exploding clouds. Si Huangyin also shouted loudly, using a great burst of power. Feng Hailwan did not use any bursts of power, though. He was already burning even his blood essence, and had long since reached his limits. Ling Han smirked coldly and waved his right hand. The divine demon's sword was summoned, its cold light dazzling the heavens. He was too strong now, and added with a celestial tool like the divine demon's sword, he was naturally invincible. Pooh! Shuigo was the first to suffer, being cleaved in two by the divine demon's sword. This was because Ling Han was targeting him specifically, seeing him as the first target that had to be killed. Shuigo screamed in pain. He attempted to reconnect the two halves of his body, but with how overbearing the divine demon sword was, it was useless even if the ripped halves of his body were pulled together. He could not fuse them back together again. Not only was that the case, he was still continuously losing blood. This bleeding would not kill a 9th Lotus Elite, but losing too much would still cause great damage to his strength, and his cultivation level could even regress. Ling Han attacked aggressively, wanting to follow up with a few more strikes and completely kill this damn insect. "How dare you!" Zi Shuang released a battle cry and joined the battle as well. At this time, more people were rushing here. Huaijian, Su Xing, Jing Zhongyue, and the others were naturally all astounded when they found out that this human was Ba, and when they knew that he was the man that the heavenly venerates were hunting down, they were naturally even more astonished. Ling Han's right hand wielded the sword, while his left hand was curled into a fist. As the divine sword swept out, There was no one that could match it at all, and Fists of Fury was also filled with dominance. Even Zishuang did not dare face it directly, and they could only block it with the combined efforts of 2 or 3 people. Die. Jing Zhongyue and Huai Jian both joined the battle. There was no way that they could allow Ling Han to kill anyone. Finally, Ancestral King Nawa appeared as well. His eyes swept over them, and a rip was immediately torn in the air, as if the heaven itself was about to collapse. Ancestral kings were too strong, being equal with regulations themselves. As long as you used regulations, there was no possible way that you could match an ancestral king. This was an overwhelming level of strength. Surrender! Ancestral King Nawa moved, grabbing out at Ling Han. Small tower. Ling Han called out mentally. Immediately, an indescribable power surged out within Ling Han's body. Then the heaven and earth immediately paled, with thunderclouds spreading out densely, as if a supreme great tribulation was about to descend. This was because the Black Tower had shown its might. This was a power that belonged to the celestial realm, and was not recognized by this realm. Pung! Ling Han directly sent out a palm strike, and Ancestral King Nawa was instantly smacked flat. When he raised his hand again, this powerful being had already become a mess of flesh and blood. This was an ancestral king. Yet Ling Han did not even cast a second look at him. The Black Tower's power was limited. He had to finish what he came to do as soon as possible. Pung, pung, pung. He did not deliberately target anyone, but Xue Ge directly exploded under his crushing aura, both form and spirit obliterated. With the surge of might from the Black Tower, Ling Han could possess pseudo-heavenly venerable tier strength. Even the majority of Ninth Heaven's celestial kings could not survive 10 moves from him. What more a mere Ninth Lotus, especially when the latter was already severely injured at that. Everyone was stunned. An ancestral king and a monarch star had actually already died in Ling Han's hands in the blink of an eye, and they couldn't even manage to react in time. No wonder the Heavenly Venerates had issued an arrest warrant for Ling Han together. Chapter 2367, Clashing with a Heavenly Venerate. Chapter 2367, Clashing with a Heavenly Venerate. Ling Han did not linger in battle. He merely casually shot out a punch, and Huai Jian and the others instantly exploded like flowers being scattered. Under his might, they could not even last a single blow. Most people directly exploded into flesh and blood, but Huai Jian and Jing Zhongyue were spared. A light flickered on them, and it blocked the attack from Ling Han. The power of the Heavenly Venerate, desolate eternity, Ling Han thought immediately. That elite was really prejudiced, having given additional help and care to Huai Jian and Jing Zhongyue. He did not follow up with another blow, but rather shot forwards onto the mountain. With his speed, he instantly threw Jing Zhongyue and Huai Jian off his tail, charging into the mountains. Ancestral King Ji Kong immediately awoke. He had sensed a terrifying killing intent had already locked down on him, but he had just opened his eyes when a cold flash had already struck down on him, splitting him in two. Pa! The left and right side of his body slipped down to the sides, and he died just like that. Hong long long. Lightning flashed in the skies, turning into multiple giants that descended, launching a barrage of blasts at Ling Han, and the heaven and earth grieved as well, lamenting the death of an ancestral king. Ling Han took a deep breath and concentrated his power entirely on the divine demon sword. The frightening power of heavenly venerable tier caused even the blade to tremble, as if it could shatter at any moment. He shouted loudly and delivered a sword strike. Pung! The whole divine, desolate mountain shuddered strongly, dust and dirt flying and turning into a massive mushroom cloud, and if one could come into the center of the mountains, they would see that the whole mountain peak had been leveled. Wang, a frightening divine sense, spread out, filled with age and experience. It was like a wild beast that had gone through endless years had awoken, filled with fury and planning to destroy the heavens and earth. Heavenly venerate, desolate eternity. The commotion was too great, awakening him from his secluded state. As he had been refining the heavenly venerate Wulu all these epochs, this disturbance had incredibly strong effects on him. Thus he was incredibly furious. Who would dare to disturb him? You! The heavenly venerate, desolate eternity stretched out a hand, and the dust and dirt that filled the skies were instantly swept aside. He stood proudly like the overlord of a realm, exuding an aura that even the heaven and earth seemed to be trembling at. Ling Han understood. It was not the heaven and earth that was fearing him, but rather regulations. His vitality index was close to 16,000 points. This guy's strength was already so high that it was close to the level of second-tier heavenly venerate. A mere piece of trash of the human race, just because you have a mighty precious tool. You dare to commit insolence in front of me. Heavenly venerate, desolate eternity smirked coldly. Boom! The power of heaven and earth rippled. Regulations were not allowed to exist at all, and split apart consequently. This blow could destroy worlds. Ling Han roared loudly and faced it with his full efforts. Pung! With this blow, he was directly sent flying tens of thousands of miles away. The gap between them was too wide. How could a pseudo-heavenly venerate face a real heavenly venerate? What more when the heavenly venerate desolate eternity was one of the strongest on this level at that. Perhaps he was even the strongest heavenly venerate. But Ling Han charged back without the slightest hesitation. The divine demon's sword danced, unafraid of even a heavenly venerate. You are courting death. The heavenly venerate, desolate eternity, was outraged, and once more stretched out his hand to strike Ling Han down. Pung, pang, pung! With every strike, Ling Han was undoubtedly sent flying. The gap in strength between them was really too wide, but he would immediately charge back every time like he was a monster that could not be killed. Finally, heavenly venerate, desolate eternity was truly angered. He had left behind a portion of his power to suppress the heavenly venerate Wu Lu all this while, and that was why he had not been able to unleash his true power, but now he could not accept that he had not been able to kill a mere minor character in Ninth Lotus after such a long time. Boom, he sent out another palm strike, and his might instantly soared 100 or even 1,000 times over, terrifying to the extreme. This time he was truly attacking with his full power. Even the heaven and earth would be wary of such strong power, and a part of the heavenly tribulation instantly blasted at the heavenly venerate, desolate eternity. He was too powerful and could not exist in this realm. Pung! Without the slightest doubt, Ling Han exploded into a shower of blood. Then a flame ignited. He was presently reforming and healing himself rapidly, rising from the ashes. Initially, Ling Han could not use rising from the ashes after entering the foreign realm, because regulations differed, but the Black Tower was showing its might this time, which was equivalent to having created a small realm of the celestial realm. In this zone, Ling Han could use all the regulations of the celestial realm. Overestimating yourself! The heavenly venerate, desolate eternity smirked coldly. So what if you rose from the ashes again? He only had to follow up with another strike, and could still send Ling Han on to his next life. Boom! He struck out with a palm, not giving Ling Han any chance to resurrect himself. Pung! Right at this crucial moment, his palm was actually blocked. What? Even heavenly venerate, desolate eternity revealed an expression of disbelief. This was something that he had completely failed to predict. Ha 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 ha! Desolate eternity never thought that I would still be able to battle, right? The laughter of heavenly venerate Wu Lu rang out. His figure had appeared as well, turning into the image of a middle-aged man in his 30s. He was handsome, generous, and incomparable in his charisma. So, this brat wanted to draw me into attacking with full power so as to create a chance for you to escape. Heavenly venerate, desolate eternity immediately understood. Instantly, flames were gushing from his nostrils, stronger than even the origin flame of the heaven and earth. He was almost dying from fury. Now that Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had escaped, it meant that his efforts for the last over dozen epochs would be wasted. That's right. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu declared proudly, his eyes sweeping over Ling Han and holding a hint of gentleness. This was the doting love an elder felt for a junior. So what about it? I managed to suppress you once, so I will definitely be able to suppress you a second time, or a third time. Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity smirked coldly, but though his words were confident, all his efforts had come to naught this time, and who knew how many more epochs he would have to go through to finally refine the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. Naturally, he was furious to the extreme at this. Desolate Eternity, we will fight again next time. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu laughed loudly and stretched out a hand, grabbing the newly revived Ling Han. Then, taking a step, he was instantly millions and millions of miles away. Furthermore, before he left, he did not forget to deliver a last attack, filled with the fury that had accumulated from him almost being refined. Boom! Heavenly Venerate Divine Desolate Mountain had no choice but to parry this attack, but merely the rippling of several slivers of power almost razed the whole divine, desolate mountain into the ground. And who knew how many people had become a mush of blood and flesh? This was the strike of a Heavenly Venerate, the power that surpassed regulations. Damn it! Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity roared in fury, and set off in hot pursuit of Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. He was determined to capture both Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu and Ling Han, and subject them to the cruelest of punishments. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu did not linger in battle at all, and directly aimed for the connecting point of the two realms. With how fast the speed of a Heavenly Venerate was, they could appear at any corner with a mere thought. Though this was only the manifestation of divine sense, which was faster than their physical body, in truth, their physical speed was not much worse, either. In merely half an hour, the connecting point of the two realms was already within sight. In this place, the storm of energy had taken the form of a colossal waterfall that descended from the heavens, preventing anyone from leaving or entering. Even a Heavenly Venerate would be severely wounded should they attempt to barge in by force, and added with how they would be targeted by the heaven and earth, there was a 99% chance that they would die. Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity was already close to approaching. He couldn't help but smirk coldly. Could it be that they had come here planning to barge into the storm of energy? Desolate Eternity, no need for the send-off. Your life will be up to this brat to take in future. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu laughed loudly, charging over into the energy storm without the slightest hesitation. No. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu screamed in fury. Though his strength had greatly improved in these more than dozen epochs, he had still not reached the pinnacle of the first tier, Heavenly Venerate. As he saw it, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was actually a Heavenly Venerable tier, great herb for him. He stretched out his hand to grab him, gushing with his full power, the ground in the surrounding area stretching as far as hundreds of thousands of miles was completely destroyed. Who knew how many beings of the foreign realm had been implicated and died? Chapter 2368, Noble Ideals. Chapter 2368, Noble Ideals. Heavenly Venerable tier had surpassed regulations. What kind of lofty existence was this? Every single person that could become a Heavenly Venerate was a prodigy among prodigies. Who would be weaker than the other? Even if Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was in a weak state, now that he had the lead, he was not afraid that the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity would catch up to him, either. Boom! He rushed into the energy storm, all signs of him disappearing immediately. Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity came to an abrupt stop. He could charge in, but he would definitely suffer severe injuries, and with the overall level of the celestial realm being lower, the power targeting him would instead be stronger. In a state of severe injury, he would definitely be killed. He roared to the heavens, his voice thunderous and echoing throughout the entire foreign realm, which instantly drew the notice of various heavenly venerates, who manifested their divine sense here. Setting the heavenly venerate desolate eternity aside, after heavenly venerate Wu, Lu charged into the energy storm. His hand held Ling Han, using his supreme power to protect him. Yet he, with noble aspirations, faced the energy storm head-on. He had been imprisoned for over a dozen epochs and had almost been refined. Naturally, he would prefer to die in battle instead. He spat out blood continuously. Heavenly Venerable Tier was indeed superior to regulations, but at least first tier Heavenly Venerate was not enough to stand against the heaven and earth. Being barraged by the energy storm, his whole body was bathed in blood, and even his bones broke one after another. But this Heavenly Venerate's fighting spirit blazed even higher. There was a faith keeping him strong, was determined to deliver Ling Han safely back to the celestial realm, even if it meant his death. As he saw it, this was the hope of the celestial realm. Ling Han was the sole and only person who had managed to venture into the foreign realm and return completely unscathed. If Ling Han could become a heavenly venerate, he could possibly become the strongest heavenly venerate. He burst out with his full power, traversing through the energy storm bit by bit. Heavenly Venerable Tier power soared into the heavens, and he roared repeatedly. His noble aspirations surged as he brandished his fists continuously. He was practically invincible, endless light surging out of his body, dazzling the ages. With every punch he shot out, the energy storm would be blasted apart, and a vacuum would appear, and even the time stream could be glimpsed. This was a heavenly venerate, superior to regulations and endlessly close to heaven and earth itself. Boom! He charged out of the energy storm, standing proudly in the skies. I have returned. He released a bold, loud laugh. He then took a deep breath. Boundless power of heaven and earth turned into a visible stream that poured out towards his body. Initially, he was battered and bruised, but with the pouring of the strong power of heaven and earth into him, there were signs that his injuries were actually slowly recovering. But right at this moment, thunderclouds gathered densely, with lightning flashing in their depths, striking out at the heavenly venerate Wu Lu. This lightning possessed frightening might, and actually stopped the recovery of heavenly venerate Wu Li's injuries. The heavens despised him. A heavenly venerate had snatched the power of heaven and earth, surpassed regulations, and was no longer under the authority of the heaven and earth. At the same time, he was also abandoned by the heaven and earth. Thus, the moment he appeared, he would be targeted by the heaven and earth, and if he actually fought, it would be even more serious. He wanted to heal his injuries. What more when it was such heavy Tao injury? That was practically impossible. Suddenly, the supply of power of heaven and earth stopped, and heavenly venerate Wu Lu frowned greatly. If he was still in his prime state, he would not need to fear being obstructed by the heaven and earth. He could snatch it by force. After all, the heaven and earth could not directly interfere with him, and could only act through regulations, but even the strongest regulations would only be at the ninth heaven celestial king tier. But now that his strength had dropped to rock bottom, he had also used the last bit of his power when he passed through the energy storm. He really was at the end of his line now. Wang, a figure appeared, exuding a great aura that suppressed the heaven and earth. Jiwu Heavenly Venerate. The moment he appeared, he was naturally targeted by the heaven and earth as endless lightning blasted down on him. Wu Lu. Jiwu Heavenly Venerate exclaimed in shock. He was incredibly stunned. This person in front of him should have died over a dozen epochs ago, and now he had actually made a sudden reappearance. Even with his subtlety, he was stunned. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu smiled boldly and asked, Never thought I could return again, right? Jiwu Heavenly Venerate humphed, his face expressionless, yet a wild storm was taking place in his heart. In the past, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had used himself to crash into the connecting point of the two realms, just like the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, sacrificing himself to protect the celestial realm. And now, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had appeared once more. Then what about the karmic life Heavenly Venerable? If the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had not died, matters would really become troublesome. Thank goodness. He swept an eye over the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. The latter's power of heaven and earth was practically exhausted, and he was also severely injured. Even if he made no move, the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu would still rapidly walk towards death. This disobedient brat. When Jiwu Heavenly Venerate spotted Ling Han, who was still in Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's grasp, a flash of killing intent flickered in his eyes. Previously, he had personally pursued Ling Han, yet the latter had actually managed to flee into the foreign realm. This was a humiliation to him. How could a Heavenly Venerate fail? Hand over this disobedient brat, and I will let you enjoy the rest of your life in peace, he said. He appeared very generous, but he knew that there were not many days left for the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu, and that was why he had spoken in this manner. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu smirked coldly. Jiwu, you are truly shameless. For the sake of your own transcendence, you have set aside all the living creatures of the entire celestial realm, and you can still bring yourself to stand in front of me? Are you courting death? Jiwu Heavenly Venerate asked menacingly. You only have about 100 years to live at most. I do not mind sending you earlier on your way. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu laughed loudly. That's right. There is indeed not much time left for me, but it is no issue to drag another person down with me before I die. Do you wish to die with me? Jiwu Heavenly Venerate was disdainful. You are already at the end of your line. What right do you have to bring me down with you? You have no measure of your own abilities. Xiao, as he spoke, various colorful clouds flashed repeatedly in the skies, and a great many people appeared around them. They were all celestial kings. They naturally had sensed the abnormal fluctuation in the energy storm and had come to investigate the matter. But how could a ninth heaven celestial king possibly compare to a Heavenly Venerate in speed? There were really quite a number of people there. Eternity Celestial King, Everlasting Youth Celestial King, Treading Cloud Celestial King, Thousand Word Celestial King, as well as Shangji Wei. When these celestial kings spotted Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu, they all looked incredibly stunned. There was actually another Heavenly Venerate in the celestial realm. I will repeat it again. Hand over that disobedient brat, or you will have to die with him. Jiwu Heavenly Venerate issued the final warning. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was nonchalant. If I went all out in battle, it would be no problem to drag you down with me. If you wish to die, I can oblige you. Jiwu Heavenly Venerate instantly frowned. Though he could tell that Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's injuries were extremely severe, and he would not have long to live, exactly how much battle prowess he had left was still a question mark. The latter was a person that would definitely die. If he dragged him down with him, that would naturally be a great loss on his side. We parted over a dozen epochs ago, my friend, and you do not seem to look too well. A cold laugh rang out, and yet another supreme overlord arrived. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable. If I join forces with friend Jiwu Heavenly Venerate, do you still have the confidence to drag either one of us down with you? Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable asked. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was still uncaring. When the two of you are but a thought. His face bore an expression of disdain, as if he could destroy these two powerful beings with a single strike. My real self will definitely arrive in less than an hour, Jiwu Heavenly Venerate stated evenly. That applies to me as well. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable looked coldly at Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. My friend, you had best accept our kind offer. Selfish guys, don't talk of such nonsense with me. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was completely unmoved. bearing noble ideals as he pointed at the Jew heavenly venerate and sealed emotion, heavenly venerable respectively. Just bring it on, and I will take on the two of you. Chapter 2369. True Selves Arrive. Great Clash of Heavenly Venerates. Chapter 2369. True Selves Arrive. Great Clash of Heavenly Venerates. Everyone was enchanted. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was too dominant, facing two great Heavenly Venerates all by himself. He was clearly already heavily injured, yet was not afraid in the slightest, and looked down loftily on the rest of the world. And if he was in his prime condition, just how noble and majestic would he be? Ling Han could imagine it. When Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had battled with the foreign realm Heavenly Venerates, he had also been alone, and he had just charged onwards like that, turning even eternity into a void, and destroying the foreign realm's dreams of invasion for several epochs. This would cause one's blood to blaze, dream about this, and be filled with admiration. Unfortunately, sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, and the other great Heavenly Venerates had clearly deliberately concealed this part. The future generations had not even heard of a person like the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu, and that was the same for even karmic life Heavenly Venerable. If it were not for the fact that there were some old celestial kings that had been alive since that era, karmic life Heavenly Venerable's sacrifice would probably have long since been buried in history. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable's expression darkened. Friend Wu Lu, your time is already limited. Even if you can save this brat once, how could it be that you could save him 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times? Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu scoffed. As long as I am still alive, I will not allow anyone to touch a single hair on his head. Both sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, and Jew Heavenly Venerate did not speak further, and merely looked on coldly, as if capable of freezing even time and space. Even ninth heaven's celestial kings could feel their bodies trembling as a boundless chill spread out. It should be known that this was only the divine sense of two Heavenly Venerates. If their true selves were here, just how terrifying would it be? Heavenly Venerable Tyr was too powerful. More and more celestial kings were arriving. Next, it was not just celestial kings. Even a considerable number of ascending origin Tyrs and immortal palace Tyrs had arrived. The majority were the most talented of the younger generation, such as Ji Wuming, Shi Chanzi, Hong Huang, Jialan, the Rain Emperor, and so on. When they saw Ling Han, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How was this possible? Wasn't this guy being hunted by the Heavenly Venerates? It was said that he had fled into the foreign realm. But after roaming around there, not only had he returned completely unscathed, he was accompanied by another Heavenly Venerate. Just what kind of great luck was this? Ling Han swept a glance over. His eyes first paused on the Rain Emperor, and he smiled slightly at this second brother of his before shifting over and pausing on Hong Huang. He was stunned. This guy actually hadn't died. A dead person could still be revived. This was his first time encountering something like this. It had to be the power of a Heavenly Venerate. How truly shocking that they were capable of even reviving a dead man. This was truly heaven-defying. However, at this moment, whether it was Ling Han, Ji Wuming, or Hong Huang, none of them were in any place to speak. The three great Heavenly Venerates were the true main characters here, and they were also the only leading characters. More and more people arrived, but after a while space ripped, and two people walked out at practically the same moment. Xiao! The two slivers of divine sense of the Juwu Heavenly Venerate and sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, immediately shot towards these two people and sank into them in a flash. These two people were the true selves of the two great Heavenly Venerates. Their true selves had arrived, and this might naturally could not be spoken about in the same breath. They did not need to move, and even the heaven was trembling and the ground was cracking as clouds swirled quickly. A boundless heavenly tribulation was already forming, turning into an ocean of lightning giants that blasted out at these two great heavenly venerates. Hand him over or die. Sealed emotion, heavenly venerable demanded coldly. He was clearly only as tall as the average person, but as everyone looked at him, it was like they were looking up at a god that was millions and millions of meters tall, and their only option was to kneel and worship. You're dreaming. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu scoffed. If he had wanted to hand Ling Han over, he would have done so long ago, and the reason why he had not fled earlier was because, firstly, this was the pride of a Heavenly Venerate, and secondly, he knew that wherever he fled, he would be caught up with ultimately by the two of them, so he might as well battle them here and now. Battle until these two people hurt, and naturally they would no longer dare to say anything else. Then we will send you off to the underworld. Jiwu Heavenly Venerate spoke, his voice overbearing and filled with the authority of an emperor. Instantly, the majority of people were compelled to kneel, feeling like even their hearts were close to exploding. Only the minority, a few ninth heaven celestial kings, were exempted. Those were the celestial kings of the highest tier. Jiwu, you really think you are the highest authority now? Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu laughed coldly and actually made the first move. With him sending out a palm strike, it turned to a millstone that shrouded the heavens and sun, and descended on Jiwu Heavenly Venerate. An ancient seal appeared on this millstone, surpassing the height of regulations, as if it was unveiling the true essence of the heaven and earth. Those ninth heaven celestial kings instantly widened their eyes and looked on carefully. This was a Heavenly Venerate using himself as an example. If they could grasp some ideas from this, who knew they might be able to open the great doors that led to the Heavenly Venerable tier. Heavenly Venerable tier had surpassed regulations, but this did not mean that he could not use regulations. This was Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's own Dao. Jiwu Heavenly Venerate was naturally unafraid, charging forwards with his fists. Boom! 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 The two great Heavenly Venerates fought. This was too terrifying. The heaven and earth was forcefully ripped apart, as if doomsday was about to arrive. And as they fought, the heavenly tribulation naturally became even more terrifying. Heavenly Venerates were elites that could truly damage this heaven and earth, and the moment they appeared, they would be targeted by the heaven and earth, and if they battled, they would sustain an even stronger backlash from the heaven and earth. But now, neither of the two great Heavenly Venerates paid any regard to this. They were only battling with their full efforts. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable set his eyes on Ling Han. It was only a stare, yet Ling Han felt as if his skin was about to explode. Small tower, Ling Han said softly, and a strong power instantly bubbled out of his body, the aura of pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier spreading out. Now that he had returned to the celestial realm, the Black Tower naturally could extract the power of heaven and earth of the celestial realm, and was completely revived. However, the Black Tower had not completely recovered. Thus, it could only help Ling Han reach the height of pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier now. Otherwise, it could have boosted him to a higher level. However, this was more than enough to deal with the pressure exerted by the sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable. After all, there was no need for him to clash with a direct attack from a Heavenly Venerate. Humph! Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable moved, stretching out a hand. Instantly, it arrived in front of Ling Han's eyes. It was as large as a star, planning to squeeze Ling Han to bursting. Sealed emotion, what is the point of bullying a child? Heavenly Venerable Wu Lu suddenly charged back, his fist flying towards Sealed Emotion, Heavenly Venerable's face. Sealed Emotion, Heavenly Venerable knew that Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was already close to the end of his line, but this was still the attack of a Heavenly Venerate, after all. How could he possibly dare to be careless? He had no choice but to give up his attack on Ling Han and turn around to parry the attack from Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu. Ha 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 ha. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu laughed loudly, his lofty aspirations soaring. He alone was clashing with two great Heavenly Venerates, and still managed to attack with every move, making it seem as if he alone could match two great heavenly venerates. Everyone was exclaiming repeatedly in shock. They had not thought that this newly appeared heavenly venerate would actually be so impressive. Sealed Emotion and Jiwoo had their own considerations. It was not that they were no match to Wu Lu. On the contrary, the latter was already covered with multiple injuries, his battle prowess dropping drastically. Either one of them was actually stronger than Wu Lu. However, it could not be helped that the heavenly venerate Wu Lu was aiming to die together with either one of them with every move, and neither of them had the resolve to die with him. In fact, they were not willing to even sustain severe injuries. Thus, heavenly venerate Wu Lu naturally had gotten the upper hand and the initiative. But this kind of situation could not be maintained for too long. Under the pressure of battle of heavenly venerable tears, heavenly venerate Wu Li's injuries would very soon explode, and he would be killed first by the heaven and earth without any interference from them. Do you really think that we cannot do anything to you? Jiwoo heavenly venerate was truly angered now. His forehead split apart, and a divine sword leaped out. Instantly, every person that wielded a sword felt their sword heart trembling as if it was about to crumble, and whether their sword was in their god tool or otherwise, they were all moaning. Chapter 2370. At the end of the line, Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable appears. Chapter 2370. At the end of the line, Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable appears. Die. Jiwoo heavenly venerate brandished his sword, and a majestic light blazed. Only a strong sword chi was left in this world. It was like an emperor had come out, and everyone could only kneel on the ground and bow to him. This was a heavenly venerable, tear precious tool, Jiwoo Great Imperial Sword. In front of this imperial sword, any other sword-like tools could only tremble. This was the reverence they felt towards a heavenly venerate. Heavenly venerate Wu Lu clenched his fists and greeted the incoming blow. Pung, 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 sword light and fist chi collided, dazzling hundreds of millions of kilometers. They exchanged a series of several hundred blows before finally ending the clash for this round. Copious amounts of blood were gushing from heavenly venerate Wu Li's fists, looking just like a golden celestial fluid. Heavenly venerate Wu Lu frowned slightly. His present battle prowess had dropped so greatly that he would actually be wounded by the other's weapon. He would be more willing to battle intensely to boiling point, drawing the interference of the heaven and earth so that they both would not dare to continue the battle further. Otherwise, should the power of heaven and earth move aggressively, it was definitely not something that a first-tier heavenly venerate could deal with. After all, neither of them had transcended, and they were still limited by this realm. But he had not expected that his own battle prowess would actually decline so greatly. Going by the look of things now, the Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable only had to summon his own precious tool, and the two of them combining forces should be capable of very quickly suppressing him. Wu Lu, what is the point? Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable asked coldly. Since you have already become the dust of history, why did you have to appear again? Heavenly venerate Wu Lu laughed, his fighting spirit reignited. How could a heavenly venerate possibly feel despair? Even after being refined by the desolate eternity heavenly venerate for so many years, he had never given up and had always been earnestly preserving that sliver of practically impossible hope. However, he had truly managed to wait until Ling Han came. He wiped his blood casually and pressed the heavenly venerate blood on Ling Han's body. Instantly, Ling Han grunted, feeling like his skin was on fire and blood was dripping from his 7 apertures. It should be known that ancestral king blood was greatly nutritious, and what Ling Han had gotten was from those in 14th Lotus and below, and not this was heavenly venerate blood, so it was naturally incredibly overwhelming. Thankfully, when heavenly venerate Wu Lu had wiped the blood on Ling Han's body, he had already erased the murderous aura contained within, or Ling Han would not be able to bear it, even if he was a pseudo-heavenly venerate right now. But the benefits were endless. This was Heavenly Venerate blood, and what Heavenly Venerate would extract their own blood to nourish someone else. If it were not for the fact that Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had been bleeding from being attacked, he naturally would not waste it, either. As for now, it would be a waste if he did, so it would be better that he use it on Ling Han instead. Ah! Ling Han released a loud shout. The Heavenly Venerate blood entered his body, turning into gushing lava. This power was too shocking, and he felt incredible agony as if his whole body was about to explode. But the boundless great power of heaven and earth was modifying his physique. This was similar to void particle energy, but it was clear that the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had not grasped it. He was a first-tier Heavenly Venerate, so what he possessed was the unique power of the celestial realm. Even in such agony, Ling Han was still carefully experiencing it, because this was an incredibly rare opportunity. He touched this power to establish foundations for the day when he would advance to the Heavenly Venerable tier in the future. When a Heavenly Venerate ascended Tao, they would definitely have to grasp this kind of unique power. This was the basis of a Heavenly Venerate, and was also eternally engraved in his bones, signifying that he would be a person of this realm forever. Whichever realm they ascended Tao in, the unique mark of that realm would then be emblazoned on them. With his present power of pseudo-heavenly venerable tier, Ling Han was qualified to make a slight comparison, and realized that this unique power of the celestial realm was slightly inferior to void particle energy. It was just by a bit, and there was practically no distinguishing which was superior or inferior, but there was still that slight sliver of a gap. What nonsense are you spouting? Come fight me! Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's fighting spirit blazed. He had already been suppressed for over a dozen epochs. Previously, it was for the sake of escorting Ling Han back that he restrained himself from fighting, but at this moment he only felt the fiery emotions of wanting to have an intense battle to his heart's content. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable spoke no further, and a string of purple bells appeared above his head. The intent realm of primordial age and history flowed out. Upon closer look, phoenixes and dragons were entwined on these purple bells. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu looked, and couldn't help but clench his fists, looking furious. You have actually refined both Ancestor Dragon and Ancestor Phoenix. The two of them were living beings that were from the first batch of creatures that came into being when the realm was first created, and were also the strongest beings among them. They were practically capable of representing the celestial tool. Yet their spirits had been plucked out by the sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, to increase the might of his own precious tool. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, smiled faintly. I have never forged my own precious tool, because I have been waiting for this Ancestor Dragon and Ancestor Phoenix to reach the pseudo-Heavenly Venerable tier, so that I could refine them into my 10,000 Dragon, Heavenly Phoenix bells. When these words fell, everyone was speechless. Ancestor Dragon and Ancestor Phoenix were both two of the strongest among Ninth Heaven celestial kings, and there was a chance that they could take that final step. It was rumored that they had been in seclusion for the last few epochs, and a great many celestial kings were also filled with anticipation about this. Once the two of them appeared, there might be another 2 Heavenly Venerates added to the ranks of the celestial realm. But now, as it turned out, the sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, had actually extracted the spirits of these 2 powerful celestial kings and turned them into his precious tools. He had gone too far, but who would dare say anything? At first, I had wanted to refine your corpse after your death to increase the might of the 10,000 Dragon Heavenly Phoenix bells, but since you are so stubborn, I will refine you directly. Being irrigated by the blood essence of a Heavenly Venerate, this precious tool's might will definitely become even stronger. Sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable declared wickedly. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was outraged, his black locks all fluttering upwards. He had not thought that the sealed emotion, Heavenly Venerable, actually had designs on him, and planned to refine his corpse for his precious tool after his death. However, both great Heavenly Venerates were already going all out. By himself, he was weak, and he was severely injured at that, so how was he supposed to counter them? He had always been unhindered for his whole life, and what crisis or danger had he not encountered before? Even when the heavenly venerates of the foreign realm were right at their borders, he had still forged on without fear, and in the end successfully halted their enemies outside their borders. Yet now he discovered that there was really no way out for him. Why had this damned power of heaven and earth still not reached its limit yet, so that these two great heavenly venerates would refrain from acting to prevent harm to themselves, and not dare to wreak further destruction? Otherwise, the three of them could only die together. We should end this now. Jiwu, heavenly venerate, charged out, sword in hand, the aura of a great emperor flooding out. Boom! Ling Han's body bounced out of nowhere, releasing a frightening hum, as if his body was a battle drum that was being pounded. Both sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, and Jiwu, heavenly venerate, turned to look at him, sensing that his present condition was slightly unusual. In their eyes, a pseudo-heavenly venerate was not much different from mere trash. At most, it would only take slightly additional effort for them to deal with him. However, the aura that was seeping from Ling Han at this moment surpassed pseudo-heavenly venerable tier. It was not the blood of heavenly venerate Wu Lu, but rather something in his body seemed like it was about to be revived. Ah! Ling Han roared, his chest splitting apart, and a black tower appeared abruptly. Yuan Sheng! In the distance, Shang Jiwei exclaimed in shock, tears streaming down her face instantly. Heavenly venerate! The large black dog had also popped out from who knew where and jumped up and down. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The Empress, Hu Niu, Lu Yutong, and the others, all those in the Black Tower, were tossed out, including things like starstones and ancestral king blood. Xiao, the Black Tower, rapidly grew in size, turning into a 9-story tower that was filled with an intimidating ancient aura. Yuan Sheng, you have already died. What might could a precious tool have? Sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, said coldly. Just like they would instill a sliver of their own divine sense while they were forging their precious tool. It was this sliver of divine sense that was activated now, allowing the Black Tower to unleash heavenly venerable tier battle prowess. Chapter 2371, A Shocking Turn of Events. Chapter 2371, A Shocking Turn of Events. However, a sliver of divine sense was only just that. When this sliver of divine sense was completely exhausted, the battle prowess of the Black Tower would also fall. After all, a heavenly venerate tool was still forged by a heavenly venerate, so the strongest was still the heavenly venerate. A figure walked out of the Black Tower. It could clearly be distinguished that this was not a real person, but rather a shadowy image that had been formed from countless points of light. Yuan Sheng! Shang Jiwei wept. To think that she could still see the man that she had yearned for day and night after being separated for 8 epochs. She was practically mad with excitement. Meanwhile, the large black dog was barking loudly and was also howling at the skies. Sealed emotion, you are right. I have indeed long since died, and have only left behind a sliver of my divine sense in the Tower of 3 Realms. Once it is activated, it will disperse very soon. Karmic life, heavenly venerable, stated calmly. However, the 2 of you have made one miscalculation. What? Jiwu, heavenly venerate, asked, his voice thundering. It was like the exercise of might from an emperor. Karmic life, heavenly venerable, pointed at the skies, and then grabbed the Black Tower. Xiao, he actually shot rapidly towards the skies. What did this mean? He had appeared with only such great difficulty, and actually did not make his move before the sliver of divine sense was completely burnt out, but rather raced towards the skies. Crack! In the skies, dark clouds spread out, and lightning flashed in their depths. Yeah. The 3 great heavenly venerates, Sealed Emotion, Jiwu, and Wu Lu, all exclaimed in surprise. Abruptly, they realized that the power of heaven and earth was roaring, and turning into multiple dragons that surged forth from all directions. Pum, pum, pum. Visible to the naked eye, 16 colored divine dragons flew out from the ground, winding and twisting in the skies. The three great heavenly venerates were baffled. How could the power of heaven and earth actually manifest? This was illogical, because the greatest taboo of the heaven and earth was that someone could grasp this essence power and escape its control. Xiao, a divine dragon, suddenly surged towards Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu and sank into his body with a flash. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was surprised. Heavenly Venerates were not doted sons of the heaven and earth, but rather abandoned children. The power of heaven and earth was not bestowed by the heaven and earth, but rather something he had stolen from the heaven and earth. Previously, he had been severely injured and could not contend with the heaven and earth. Thus, he had been unable to further extract the power of heaven and earth. Not only did his battle prowess drop greatly, his injuries could not be healed either. They would only become more severe, and he would finally be killed by the heaven and earth. But now, the power of heaven and earth was actually actively entering into his body. This was too inconceivable. Karmic life, heavenly venerable. It must have something to do with the karmic life, heavenly venerable. Otherwise, this would be too much of a coincidence. My wish is that all life would be akin to dragons. The voice of the karmic life, heavenly venerable, rang out from the skies. The tribulation clouds evolved, and the image of the karmic life, heavenly venerable, actually appeared. The aura he exuded was majestic and boundless, far surpassing the level of any first-tier heavenly venerate. Both Jiwu heavenly venerate and sealed emotion heavenly venerable were greatly shocked. Could it be that the karmic life heavenly venerable had not died and had instead become even stronger? Hang on. Sealed emotion heavenly venerable immediately shook his head and raised his head to look at the skies. 8 epochs ago, you have already fused yourself with heavenly Tao. Both your body and spirit have already been assimilated into the heaven and earth, but a sliver of divine sense was still left behind. Though I cannot guess the exact details of the situation, there is no way that you can influence the actions of heavenly Tao. It is only now that you can forcefully interfere with the realm using the divine sense in the heavenly venerate tool as a stimulus. Karmic life, heavenly venerable, smiled faintly. That's right. As all life channels, it has its own rhyme and reason. I have already fused with heavenly Tao and cannot interfere in the matters of this realm. However, it would only be a small token for me to make it so that the two of you would be further targeted by the power of heaven and earth. He pointed a finger, and even more 16 colored divine dragons surged into heavenly venerate Wu Li's body. Visible to the naked eye, the aura of the heavenly venerate Wu Lu was presently rapidly strengthening, and his injuries were also quickly healing. Damn it! Both sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, and Ju, heavenly venerate, humphed lowly. If things went on this way, it would really be possible for heavenly venerate Wu Lu to recover completely. They moved, but with a point of the finger from the karmic life, heavenly venerable, boom. 2 terrifying bolts of lighting struck out at the 2 great heavenly venerates, respectively, forcing them to stop. It was because these bolts of lightning had far surpassed the standards of 9th Heaven's celestial king tier, and had instead reached the level of 1st tier heavenly venerate. In fact, even among 1st tier heavenly venerates, they could be considered extremely terrifying. This was a warning from the karmic life heavenly venerable. His words did not hold a single lie, and he could really make it that the heaven and earth would target them even more strongly. Heavenly venerate Wu Lu took in deep breaths. The 16 colored divine dragons surged into his body endlessly, and his body was becoming more and more complete. His aura was also as vast as an ocean. It was like just opening his eyes could cause countless stars to fall from the skies. He had just about recovered to his strongest condition. Both Jiwu Heavenly Venerate and Sealed Emotion Heavenly Venerable were shocked and furious. Karmic Life Heavenly Venerable definitely only had a limited amount of time and extent in which he could influence the heaven and earth, and this was because of that sliver of divine sense that he had left behind in the Tower of Three Realms. Once this sliver of divine sense dispersed, he would only be assimilated by heavenly Tao. Perhaps he would still be able to see and hear, but there would be no way for him to interfere. No matter how strong a heavenly venerate was, how could they possibly compare with heaven and earth itself? But it was precisely this limited amount of time for him to show his might, and the two great heavenly venerates were completely helpless. If they wanted to oppose the karmic life heavenly venerable, they could, and that was by similarly fusing themselves with heavenly Tao. Then they would all be able to battle within heavenly Tao. But what meaning was there to this? To fuse themselves with heavenly Tao meant that they would no longer exist. Then, even if they defeated the karmic life heavenly venerable, so what? Ha 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 ha. Heavenly venerate Wu Lu laughed loudly. His injuries had already completely recovered, and he had returned to his strongest state. Even the heaven and earth was helping him cheat. So how could it not be awesome? Come fight me again. He pounced aggressively, challenging the two great heavenly venerates simultaneously. Boom, boom, boom. The two great heavenly venerates were forced to face the battle. This time, the karmic life heavenly venerable had not influenced the heaven and earth to deliberately target the sealed emotion heavenly venerable and Ju heavenly venerate. But heavenly venerate Wu Li's battle prowess was unexpectedly great. Even in a battle of 1 against 2, he was actually not at the slightest disadvantage. You, both sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, and Ju heavenly venerate were astonished. Heavenly venerate Wu Lu grinned proudly, with them all being able to become a heavenly venerate who would be weaker than the other. Though it was heavenly venerate desolate eternity that was refining him, in this process he had also spied on the former's Tao. That was over a dozen epochs, and the two heavenly venerates were both studying each other's Tao and contending with each other. Traversing the edge of danger, whoever was the slightest bit careless would be refined by the other. Hence, while heavenly venerate desolate eternity was powerful, with vitality index that was close to 16,000, that was actually the same for heavenly venerate Wu Lu as well. However, as he was in the realm of the foreign realm, and could not get any replenishment of power of heaven and earth from the celestial realm, he had become weaker and weaker. But once he returned to his prime condition, his battle prowess would be much too terrifying. His vitality index was also close to 16,000. Otherwise, how would he have managed to stand against the heavenly venerate desolate eternity? Everyone's eyes were glazed over. Who would have thought that not only had heavenly venerate Wu Lu been dragged back from the brink of death, he had become as powerful as this at that. Even in a battle of 2 against 1, he was still undefeated. Yuan Sheng. In the distance, Shang Jiwei murmured to the skies. Karmic life, heavenly venerable, looked towards her and revealed an apologetic smile. Jiwei, it was I who had let you down. In the future, let go of your grudges and continue living well. No, I want to be with you. Shang Jiwei shook her head, her tone determined and stubborn. Step after step, she walked onwards, and as she walked, her body was also burning. She was actually going to disperse herself and return to the heaven and earth. Master! And Ran exclaimed and wanted to pull Shang Jiwei back, yet the latter waved a palm lightly at her, and she was swept onto the ground. I know you must hate me for killing Yin. Now I shall give my life back to her. I want to be with you forever. Shang Jiwei burned herself, turning herself into regulations that were compatible with the heaven and earth. Everyone could not help but feel touched. Chapter 2372, Forced Away. Chapter 2372, Forced Away. When one had reached the height of celestial king tier, who did not just have the Tao of heaven and earth in their hearts, with their only purpose just to become the strongest. Shang Jiwei was a ninth heaven celestial king. Though she was not the most powerful existence in the world, there were but a mere 3 or 4 people that could surpass her. Yet, for the sake of being with her beloved, she did not hesitate to fuse herself with heavenly Tao. What was even more touching was the truth that the karmic life heavenly venerable had already died and only left behind a weak sliver of divine sense in the realm. Rather than calling him still alive, it would be more accurate to say that he was a slave, forever trapped here. However, Shang Jiwei had still chosen to fuse with heavenly Tao without the slightest hesitation. This kind of love was to be respected and to be pitied as well. The karmic life, heavenly venerable sighed, "Jiwei, is it worth it?" He could not do anything, and could only say this. He could interfere with the 2 heavenly venerates, because heavenly venerates were not recognized by the heaven and earth in the first place. He had only intensified the strength of the backlash from the heaven and earth. However, a 9th heaven celestial king was still in the system of the heaven and earth, so he could do absolutely nothing, because he had long since died, and what was left behind now was only a sliver of thought. Even Ling Han was incredibly moved. Because of Hunyao, he had always felt conflicted about Shang Jiwei, yet now he felt that this woman was truly worthy of the greatest admiration. However, if it was he would definitely be unwilling for his own women to end their lives in such a manner. However, no one could stop Shang Jiwei. Flames were burning on her whole body. This was her actively burning her life force. A 9th heaven celestial king was destroying herself. So who would dare approach? If they were implicated, that would definitely mean death. Only a heavenly venerate could ignore those flames. But now the 3 great heavenly venerates were fighting intensely, and not one of them could possibly make a move to stop her. Boom! Shang Jiwei had completely burned up, turning into a flame, which finally dispersed in the realm. However, before fusing with Tao, there was not a sliver of pain or reluctance on her face. Her expression was only filled with love. Several epochs had passed, and she was actually able to see her beloved once more. This kind of great joy exceeded all else. She was tired and only wished to lie in the arms of her beloved, never waking up. Crack! The heaven and earth grieved, expressing their sorrow at the passing of a celestial king. Silly girl! Silly girl! The karmic life, heavenly venerable, was incredibly rueful. He stretched out his hand and forcefully captured Shang Jiwei's dispersing spirit. Even if she was a 9th heaven celestial king, her Tao would be destroyed once she died. She would disperse completely, not leaving behind the slightest bit of trace of herself in this realm. The karmic life, heavenly venerable, was going against the heavens. He had forcefully gathered Shang Jiwei's spirit, and then conformed it with heaven and earth. Though it was forever impossible for Shang Jiwei to come back to life, she would also never die. She would exist spiritually in the realm, being by the karmic life, heavenly venerables, side for eternity. From everyone's perspective, this was an incredibly unfortunate matter, but as Shang Jiwei saw it, perhaps this was the best conclusion for her. No matter how big the realm, how powerful she became, and how strong she was, without the company of her beloved, what meaning was there to it? The karmic life, heavenly venerable, had also exerted his strongest efforts. He could not revive Shang Jiwei, and could only make it so that her spirit would eternally be left in the realm. He shook his head, but Shang Jiwei could not manifest. She was only a 9th heaven celestial king, and was not qualified to leave behind an imprint of herself in the realm. On the other side, the battle of the 3 great heavenly venerates was also gradually reaching boiling point, and also caused the targeting from the heaven and earth to become even more frightening. This was not the karmic life, heavenly venerable, causing trouble, but rather that their destructive power was really too terrifying. All of a sudden, the 3 great heavenly venerates all stopped. If they continued fighting, they would all be done for. It could not be helped. Who asked them to all be first-tier heavenly venerates? As long as they had not surpassed the heaven and earth, they would still be restrained by the heaven and earth. From today onwards, whoever dares to target this brat will be making an enemy of me. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was incredibly domineering, his eyes passing over the great celestial kings, filled with threat. And as for the two of you, he looked at Sealed Emotion and Juwu. If the two of you dare to target this brat again, I will kill every single one of your line. Are you threatening me? Sealed Emotion, Heavenly Venerable, asked menacingly. He had been angered. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu scoffed. So what if I am? If you dare make a move on this brat, I dare to eliminate your line. So what if you are unconvinced or displeased? I don't care. Sealed Emotion, Heavenly Venerable's expression instantly appeared very ugly. Since having become a Heavenly Venerate, when had he been threatened like this? When they had reached heights that they did, they were all working for the sake of transcendence. So how could they possibly care about other matters? But it was a different story for the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu, who looked like an absolute ruffian. The problem was that this kind of threat was extremely effective. Whether it was Sealed Emotion or Juwu, they both had their descendants and heirs. Though beings like them did not attach too much importance to kinship, who would be willing to really have their whole line eliminated? Furthermore, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was really very strong. Only when the Sealed Emotion, Heavenly Venerable, and Juwu, Heavenly Venerate worked together were they able to stand against him, which made this kind of threat even more realistic because Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had not said that he would spare the two of them. Damn it! How has this guy's strength soared so greatly? However, I can also give the two of you a chance to kill him. Heavenly Venerate Wu Li's words took another turn. As long as they are not superior to this brat by more than 2 minor levels, anyone can make a move on him. I will definitely not interfere. When these words fell, Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. He knew that the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was trying to temper him. However, this Heavenly Venerate had a really high opinion of him, to actually give the allowance of 2 minor levels. It should be known that it was not that the celestial realm did not have monarch stars. For example, if Ji Wuming was superior to Ling Han by 2 minor levels, just how powerful would his battle prowess be? However, no one knew that Ling Han's most powerful strength now was not his cultivation level, but rather his body art. Under the tempering of the power of heaven and earth, his body art had already far surpassed his cultivation level. Even a supreme monarch star, like Shui Ge, could only be pummeled at his hand. They wanted to kill him with an advantage of just 2 minor levels. Unless the other was also as much of a freak as he was, and had long since touched the power of heaven and earth, this was impossible. Even a freak like Ji Wuming could not do so. If it was a Heavenly Venerate that had reincarnated and was cultivating from the very beginning again, then it would be possible. But how could it be that a Heavenly Venerate would reincarnate and cultivate from the beginning just for the sake of killing Ling Han? Wasn't that a joke? Sealed Emotion, Juwu, do you agree? Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu asked, his dominance soaring. Both Sealed Emotion, Heavenly Venerable, and Juwu, Heavenly Venerate, were speechless. The two of them joining forces only managed to barely match Wu Lu, and even if the Green Flame's Heavenly Venerate, who had not showed himself all this while, was added into the equation, the 3 great Heavenly Venerates indeed would be able to suppress Wu Lu together. But it would be completely delusional if they intended to kill this man just like that. When strength had reached the level that the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had reached, aside from a 2nd-tier Heavenly Venerate, who else would be able to detain him? They could only leave to seek out Green Flames and discuss the matter before making their next move. The 2 great Heavenly Venerates wore an expression like they had eaten a dead child. They each nodded lightly, turned around, and ripped a hole in space, leaving. They would definitely send their most outstanding disciples to kill Ling Han. Additionally, they would also find green flames, heavenly venerate, as soon as possible, so that the three of them could cooperate to deal with Wu Lu. Otherwise, when the passageway of the two realms reopened, who knew what kind of problem heavenly venerate Wu Lu would cause again? They were incredibly anxious, wanting to transcend, and with this priority in mind, anything else could be discarded. They could sacrifice anything for the sake of this. As they watched the two great heavenly venerates actually leaving dejectedly, everyone was in extreme disbelief. These were heavenly venerates, supreme beings, and they had actually been forced away. Was the world about to change? Chapter 2373, Battling Hong Huang Again. Chapter 2373, Battling Hong Huang Again. Congratulations, my friend. There is a chance that you will take the second step, the karmic life, Heavenly Venerable said. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu nodded and said, I have heard this brat speak of you. Furthermore, I, too, have to thank you. Without your Heavenly Venerate tool, it would not have been possible for me to escape either. He did not use a respectful address for himself, giving the karmic life Heavenly Venerable enough face. The karmic life Heavenly Venerable looked towards Ling Han and revealed a smile. Actually, he had always been paying attention to this disciple, but there was never a time that required his interference, and it wasn't right until this instant that he finally showed himself. Not only had he resolved all of Ling Han's future worries, he had even found a great backer for him. He was also very gratified. This disciple that was separated from him by generations had hopes of surpassing himself. He felt very relieved, being able to delegate the responsibility for the future to Ling Han. Ling Han thought for a moment and then bowed. Greetings, Master. Since he started cultivating the indestructible Heaven Scroll, he had formed a relationship of master and disciple with the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, even if they were separated by generations. The karmic life Heavenly Venerable nodded. In the future, you can only depend on yourself. To awaken me, the Tower of Three Realms has also exercised its remaining might. From now onwards, it will sink into slumber. Unless you yourself can attain Heavenly Venerable, only then will you be able to revive it. Ling Han nodded. I will definitely achieve it. You are very good, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable said. There was a limited amount of time for him to manifest. In the future, he would rejoin the Heavenly Tao. Though he could be considered as still existing, no one could know, and it would be eternally impossible for him to make any sound. Fusing himself with Heavenly Tao was equivalent to devoting himself to Heavenly Tao, so it was naturally impossible for him to have any individual existence. Heavenly Venerate! The large black dog raced over, howling at the skies. Karmic life, Heavenly Venerable looked at the large black dog with a smile and said, Little Black, assist Ling Han well in the future. Don't worry. The large black dog stood on its hind legs as he slung an arm around Ling Han's shoulders. I have been taking care of him all this while, and would always invite him in if there was anything good. Ling Han almost sent a kick over. Aside from screwing others over, what else had this damn dog done? I am leaving. In the future, you all will have to walk the path ahead on your own, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable said, his figure becoming dimmer and dimmer. Respectful farewell, my lord. Practically everyone knelt down. They had all heard of the past achievements of the karmic life Heavenly Venerable. He had fused himself with Heavenly Realm and crashed himself into the connecting point of the two realms, winning a considerable number of epics of peace for the celestial realm. This kind of great feat naturally deserved respect. The karmic life Heavenly Venerable smiled, his figure gradually becoming fainter as he returned to the heaven and earth. Wang, a black tower descended, yet it had lost all its luster. Heavenly Venerate! The large black dog wept horribly. Usually he did not act the slightest bit proper, yet it was only now that he revealed his genuine temperament. Farewell, friend, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu said as well. Though heavenly tribulation was fearful, he did not care in the slightest. He was about to cultivate the first tier to consummate level. His strength was incredibly high, and just a thought could smash the lightning giants that assailed him into bits. As long as he did not take any direct actions which would cause the targeting from the heaven and earth to become even more frightening, he was definitely indestructible and immortal. He looked towards Ling Han again, clapping his shoulder, and said, "Brat, you have to walk the path on your own, and there is no way that I will pave the way for you either. Moreover, only a path that you have walked yourself will be wide enough, and you will be able to walk farther. If there isn't anything pressing, don't seek me out, but if anyone dares to bully you with their superior strength, I will not spare him either." Ling Han nodded. He, too, had no intention to depend on anyone. As long as their cultivation levels were close, what need would he have to fear anyone? That's right. Just moments ago, the large black dog was crying so badly, but the rate of his recovery was also dementedly fast. He had actually clapped a paw on Ling Han's shoulder, cheekily grinning, and said, "Brat, did you hear that? In the future, you are to run your own course." He paused, and then said shamelessly to Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu, "My lord, in the future, just shelter me. Grandpa Dog is 100 times more handsome, with talent 10,000 times greater than this brat's. Really, you would not be able to find anyone better." Scram! Faced with the large black dog's shamelessness, even Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu could not help but raise his foot and send him a kick. Thankfully, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu was not really angered. Otherwise, if he really kicked solidly, the large black dog could just say goodbye to this world. That's it then. With a wave of his sleeve, Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu took a step and was already boundlessly far away. He had been away from the celestial realm for over a dozen epochs, so he naturally wanted to roam around everywhere. Ling Han! Ling Han! Ling Han! A group of youths walked over, gathering around Ling Han. In the past, when Ling Han had shown his great might, killing over 100 ancestral kings through trickery, it had practically been a blinding feat. However, they had not managed to interact with him in time when he had already been forced to flee into the foreign realm. "I anticipate another battle with you," Ji Wuming said as he stood in the distance, arms crossed behind his back. Humph! Hong Huang's eyes were seeping with menace. If the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had not announced that anyone who was superior to Ling Han by more than 2 minor levels could not make a move, he would definitely have killed Ling Han by now. It should be known that he had died in Ling Han's hands once. If it were not for the fact that the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable had heaven-defying power, the grass growing on his grave would already be a foot tall by now. Ling Han had returned to the celestial realm, and his cultivation level had directly fallen to the second secret immortal palace tier, just like how he had been when he had left. However, he had actually converted a portion of his origin power into source power, so he could be considered an ascending origin tier as well. Yet, how this cultivation level should be calculated now became a problem. But the aura he revealed now was truly just at the immortal palace tier. Thus, Hong Huang, who had already advanced to the ascending origin tier, naturally could not attack him. Ling Han looked over and asked, "You are not dead?" Hong Huang's expression became livid, yet he only humphed and did not reply. "Then I will send you to the underworld once again." Ling Han brandished a fist. His cultivation level was hard to determine, but his body art would not be influenced by the regulations. He still had battle prowess that surpassed the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. "I can't be bothered to fight you," Hong Huang scoffed. "Don't worry. Since it was I that issued the challenge, Lord Wu Lu would not make trouble for you, even if I truly died in battle." Ling Han laughed. "How about it? Do you dare to battle me?" Hong Huang's heart was moved. Even if he could not kill Ling Han, he could still cruelly humiliate the latter. This was what Ling Han had invited, wasn't it? Thinking of this, he nodded and said, Since you are so determined to ask for your own humiliation, I shall oblige you." He had already advanced into the ascending origin tier. Though he was only at small accomplishment, it was naturally easily done if he wanted to suppress a mere immortal palace tier. "Fourth brother, why don't you let me?" the Rain Emperor spoke up. Though he had had a late start, he was now in the lead as he, too, had successfully advanced into the ascending origin tier. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I can deal with this kind of trash on my own. There is no need to trouble you, second brother." "All right." The Rain Emperor nodded. He believed that Ling Han would not do anything that he was not certain that he could accomplish. Since Ling Han was so sure of himself, he had to have absolute certainty in his chances of victory. "It will not take a few. I'll be done soon. Second brother, please wait a while, and we will have a proper reunion," Ling Han said smilingly. At first, he had wanted to say a few seconds, but remembering that there was no way the Rain Emperor knew of the concept of minutes and seconds, he changed his words. "Ling Han, you are too condescending," Hong Huang stated coldly. He was incredibly furious, wanting nothing more than to tear Ling Han to pieces. Ling Han crooked a finger at him. "Within 3 moves, I will teach you how to behave." "Enough!" Hong Huang roared, his voice turning into a massive mountain-splitting axe that struck down on Ling Han. "The first move," Ling Han said smilingly as he casually threw a punch. His fist landed on the giant axe, and a terrifying power surged out. Pung! This massive axe was immediately shattered into smithereens, and the power of the punch was not reduced in the slightest, still blasting towards Hong Huang. Hong Huang's eyes immediately bulged as he was completely incapable of believing what he was seeing. Chapter 2374 Universal Education. Chapter 2374 Universal Education. Hong Huang was dumbfounded. How could a mere immortal palace tier possess power that could match his? No, it was not just power that matched his, but even one superior to his. He hurriedly brandished his fists in a furious barrage, blocking the remaining power of Ling Han's punch, but his figure was being continuously pushed back involuntarily. Tung, tung, tung. With every step he took, the ground itself would tremble, and the whole surface of the ground would sink down slightly. This was because the impact that he was sustaining was too strong. As he stepped back, he was also throwing up blood, and his hair was also stretching out straightly in bursts, as if someone was pulling on it. Right when he had retreated 50 kilometers, he finally stopped. A trail of deep footsteps was left behind, as well as a trail of blood. Everyone was shocked, completely incapable of accepting this. Was he about to defy the heavens? Previously, when Ling Han had shown his might, he had been able to slaughter even ancestral kings and celestial kings. That was because he had obtained the origin magic cube, and also because he possessed a heavenly venerate tool. But the neutral zone was already destroyed by now, so there was no way that he could rely on this power. Additionally, that heavenly venerate tool had also expended all its power, and the karmic life, heavenly venerable, had clearly stated this. Then how was he still able to be so freakish? This was completely incomprehensible. Ling Han smiled slightly. "Are you prepared to die a second time?" Hong Huang set his eyes on Ling Han, his breathing slightly heavy. After a while, he took out a pair of gloves, which he slipped on. Multiple seals glowed on them, raising his aura by a considerable number of times all of a sudden. This naturally was a precious tool. It was of the ascending origin tier, and he had obtained it in an ancient site. It wasn't until he had advanced into the ascending origin tier that he could completely unleash its full might. Previously, he had not had the chance to use it at all because his opponents had all been too weak and there had been no need for it. But now he still did not feel the slightest bit of confidence even after drawing out this precious tool. His opponent was too strong, and he did not feel the slightest bit of certainty. He couldn't help but ask, "Just what have you gone through in the foreign realm?" The fact that Ling Han could be powerful to this inconceivable level had to be linked with the foreign realm. Otherwise, how could his strength improve so rapidly and greatly with just a venture into the foreign realm and back? Everyone couldn't help but prick their ears. They too were very curious. Ling Han smiled and said, "Aside from the celestial realm and foreign realm, there are countless other worlds, and they are called dimensions. There are differences in strength among dimensions. Powerful dimensions would be invading weaker dimensions so that they could devour the weaker dimension and make themselves stronger to avoid being devoured by dimensions stronger than them." These words were quite confusing, but all the people around were either prodigies or celestial kings. It was no problem for them to grasp the crux of his words. Ling Han deliberately used this chance to speak of the matter of the Genesis world because he hoped more people would know what kind of environment they were presently in so that they could lessen internal strife and have more motivation to forge bravely onwards in unity. As expected, when everyone heard that there were still a great many more worlds like the foreign realm, they were all stunned, and even the celestial kings were moved. Initially, they had thought that there were only two worlds, the celestial realm and the foreign realm. As long as they could stop the foreign realm, everything would be peaceful. Ling Han continued, "All the dimensions are collectively called the Genesis world, and dimensions are also further categorized into low-level dimensions, medium-level dimensions, and high-level dimensions. As for whether there are dimensions even stronger than high-level dimensions, there may be, but it cannot be confirmed." Someone interrupted, "Then, do we belong to high-level dimensions?" Ling Han shook his head. "Whether it is us or the foreign realm, we are both just low-level dimensions. In fact, we are the bottom of the pile among all low-level dimensions." When these words fell, a wave of commotion arose among the crowd. How could this be? The celestial realm has heavenly venerates. And just what kind of powerful existence were heavenly venerates? There could be no being stronger. Since that was the case, they still could not be considered a high-level dimension. Impossible. You must be grandstanding. Even if we are slightly weaker than the foreign realm, we should still be considered a medium-level dimension at least. Everyone was shaking their heads, completely unable to accept this. Ling Han chuckled. "The whole Genesis world is like this. A stronger dimension would be invading a weaker dimension. Take the foreign realm, for example. While they are invading us, they themselves are also being invaded by the dark inverse realm." After a pause, he continued, "And us? We are only being invaded, yet are not invading other realms. That is because we are already at the bottom rank of all the dimensions." Everyone was instantly rendered speechless. Ling Han's words were very rational, though the prerequisite was that what he had explained about the Genesis world was true. With the invasion of other dimensions, our whole world will be destroyed. Thus, we must not have any delusions, Ling Han stated gravely. Hong Huang was impatient. There were some things that he had heard the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, occasionally speak of. He was completely uncaring whether the celestial realm would be destroyed or otherwise, because if that day truly came, the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, would bring his line and leave the celestial realm with all of them. On the contrary, this was a great opportunity. The sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, could transcend and bring their line to a high-level dimension. Everyone would have a wider space for growth, because the heaven and earth was different. The difficulty level of advancing into the heavenly venerable tier in a low-level dimension would definitely be higher than in a high-level dimension. It could not be helped. This was caused by the environmental conditions. "What does this have to do with you becoming stronger?" he asked. There was naturally no need for Ling Han to answer him, but he glanced at the others and said slowly, "Because while realms are different, the regulations also seem different, yet there are a great many similarities. Though our celestial realm is slightly weaker in terms of regulations, we, too, have our own unique traits. If we can combine the two, we can use the strengths of others to make up for our own weaknesses. Then battle prowess naturally would become even stronger." As he spoke, he shot to stand right in front of Hong Huang with a single step and shot out a fist. Hong Huang raised his fists to parry, yet with a boom, his gloves flew off his hands, and his whole arm had also instantly turned into a shower of blood. It was like Ling Han was teaching by example. But this was not battle prowess that had been produced after melding the power of regulation of the two realms at all, but rather a body art that he had cultivated through extracting the power of heaven and earth. But for the sake of proving how powerful this was, Ling Han did not care at all. In any case, it was fine as long as everyone understood that his words were true. Realization dawned on everyone. Those powerful celestial kings and prodigies immediately looked tempted. They were all eager and keen, wanting to enter into the foreign realm so that they could further raise their own battle prowess. It was too unfortunate for Hong Huang. There was absolutely no one that cared about his life or death. He gritted his teeth strongly, with how overbearing the heavenly venerate Wu Lu, who was backing Ling Han up, was, who had dared to interfere in the idle matters of others. Hadn't they seen that even the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, and Zhu, heavenly venerate, had both yielded? If anyone wanted to deal with Ling Han, they could only send top-tier prodigies whose cultivation could only be superior to Ling Han's by 2 minor levels at most to make the move. But from the look of things now, to say nothing of an advantage of 2 minor levels, even one with an advantage of 10 might not be a match for Ling Han either. Ling Han grinned. I have already attained small accomplishment level of the ascending origin tier in the foreign realm, but because of the different regulations of the celestial realm, I look like how I did when I left the celestial realm. He stated his true cultivation level clearly, which was also deliberately laying a trap for others so that he could draw out those who harbored malice towards him. Though he could no longer depend on the Black Tower now, Ling Han was brimming with confidence and dared to face all challenges and difficulties. Meanwhile, Hong Huang was extremely depressed. As it turned out, Ling Han's cultivation level was the same as his. Then, with how the former had also fused the regulations of 2 realms, it was no wonder that his battle prowess was stronger than his. Chapter 2375, Kill Again. Chapter 2375, Kill Again. I forfeit. Hong Huang forced out through gritted teeth. A man could take what came. This time he was indeed no match for Ling Han. However, after this he would ask for the sealed emotion, heavenly venerables, help to send him into the foreign realm. In any case, they had an agreement with the foreign realm, so he would not have to worry about being slaughtered and eaten there. When he, too, fused the regulations of the 2 realms, he would return and defeat Ling Han. Ling Han said nothing further and merely shot another punch. What are you doing? Hong Huang roared in fury. He had already forfeited the battle. Killing you, Ling Han declared menacingly. Previously, Hong Huang had been extremely overbearing. Just because he was the disciple of a heavenly venerate, he had acted without any scruples at all in the Saintly Origin Academy and had repeatedly attacked him even. Did he think he had forgotten it all? You dare! Hong Huang could only parry with a single arm. At most, he could only unleash 80% of his normal battle prowess, so he was naturally even less of a match for Ling Han. Why wouldn't I dare? Ling Han humphed. He dared to attack even the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, what more a mere ascending origin tier. When he had become a heavenly venerate himself, he would obliterate the sealed emotion, heavenly venerable, sooner or later. Some celestial kings spoke up to mediate the strife. After all, Hong Huang was a monarch star and would definitely become a 9th heaven celestial king in the future. He would be a pillar of support for the resistance against the invasion of the foreign realm. Ling Han smirked coldly. I forgot to tell you guys. Sealed Emotion, Zhu, and Green Flames have already collaborated with the foreign realm and plan to extract the source power of the celestial realm when the celestial realm is destroyed so that they can realize their own transcendence. Hence, there is no need to expect anything from anyone of their line. In any case, they will not be sharing the fate of the celestial realm. What? When the celestial kings heard this, they all frowned. Some of them did not believe it, but when they thought carefully about the actions of the 3 heavenly venerates throughout the years, it was indeed as Ling Han said. They had not done anything for the sake of resisting the foreign realm. The matter over a dozen epochs ago was one thing. There was no one here that had lived that long. But 8 epochs ago, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had faced off against the foreign realm Heavenly Venerates on his own, and in the end sacrificed his life to barricade the passageway of the 2 realms. There were still many veteran, celestial kings that had experienced that battle. Furthermore, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had also manifested previously, and this was proof that could not be more obvious. The 3 great Heavenly Venerates were completely passive. As it turned out, they had long since made their decision to destroy the celestial realm. The only reason that they had not interfered was because they were too strong and would be targeted by the heaven and earth. Hence, they required the help of the foreign realm to accomplish this in their stead. No wonder. Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu had returned from the foreign realm, yet was faced with the assault of the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable and Juwu Heavenly Venerate. Furthermore, they were even determined to kill Ling Han because it was extremely possible that the latter would become a Heavenly Venerate in the future. Whether it was the Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu or Ling Han becoming a Heavenly Venerate, as long as they were there, they would definitely be able to stop the invasion of the foreign realm, or at least delay it, just like how the karmic life Heavenly Venerable had done, causing a delay for as long as 8 epochs. This was detrimental to the benefits of Juwu Heavenly Venerate and the others, so they naturally wanted to make a move on Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu and Ling Han. Ling Han shot up high and brandished a fist which he shot straight at Hong Huang's head. Hong Huang parried. Pa! His remaining arm was also completely destroyed. He released a furious roar, but turned around and fled. His opponent was too strong, and there was no way he could be a match. Ling Han burst forth with frightening physical power and caught up to him in a single step. In terms of short bursts of power, body art naturally far surpassed regulations. He shot another punch, which landed on Hong Huang's back. Pung! Hong Huang's whole person was beaten until he burst. The power he had put into his defense could not even withstand a single blow. Ling Han bathed in Hong Huang's shower of blood, standing proudly in midair. Though the person he had killed was only an ascending origin tier, Hong Huang was a monarch star, and would have definitely become a 9th heaven celestial king in the future. So how much did he weigh? Even celestial kings were speechless, feeling that Ling Han was really on opposing sides with the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable now. He was outrageously brave and truly completely brazen. Ling Han broke into a grin. Everyone, allow me to clean myself up before we go for a drink. Mainly, he had to first deal with the human slaves that he had brought back from the foreign realm. They cultivated the regulations of the foreign realm, so their strength would definitely drop greatly after returning to the celestial realm. Thankfully, there were not many elites among them at all. Most of them were at the severing mundane tier and below, and had not touched on regulations yet, so the effect on them actually was not very strong. At most, they would only be disliked by the heaven and earth. Ling Han would not interfere with the matter of settling them. In any case, the celestial kings would make their own decisions. Furthermore, they could also peek into the cultivation techniques of the foreign realm through them. This was considerably meaningful. After dealing with this matter, Ling Han went out to meet the others. There were many people, and those closer to him included the Rain Emperor, Yan Xinlu, Yi, and the others, as well as his previous 9 doppelgangers, such as Ling Hua and the others. Those with more distant relations included monarch stars like Shirchanzi and Jialan, monarch tiers, and some whom he had only met once or did not even know as well. Even Enran had come. After Shang Jiwei had fused herself with Heavenly Tao, the grudges between the Rock Palace and Four Seas Palace could be considered wiped from the slate. Thus, Enran planned to form a truce with Ling Han. Ling Han sighed. Though Shang Jiwei had caused the death of Yun, He had never met Ian before, either, so there wasn't any kind of affection between them. However, the care and concern that Shang Jiwei had shown him was genuine and touched him. Afterwards, when he had seen how deeply devoted she was, he truly admired her. After getting Hunyou's agreement, Ling Han and Enran wiped their old grudges from the slate. With the common, much stronger, enemy of the foreign realm facing them, what could not be let go of? Everyone asked about his experiences in the foreign realm, and Ling Han told them all that he could speak of, but did not mention anything about void particle energy. Even if he did, it would be useless. Even ninth heaven, celestial kings could not grasp this kind of power. It was only an unrealistic utopian creation, and could not be realized at all. When everyone heard about how he had shown his powerful might in the foreign realm and defeated various prodigies, ultimately becoming the top monarch star, they were all extremely inspired, who said that the celestial realm was weaker than the foreign realm. See, Ling Han had proven that someone who had walked out of the celestial realm was completely capable of becoming stronger than those of the foreign realm. Everyone drank and chatted, and Ling Han even took out some ancestral king blood, which he distributed among those close to him. The others were extremely envious of this, and wanted nothing more than to become Ling Han's lackeys. It continued for 7 days, and only then did they disperse and leave one after another. Ling Han then discussed the matters of their alliance with Yan Xianlu and Yi, giving them some resources, especially ancestral king blood. Then he talked with the Rain Emperor for a while. Adian bestowed a considerable amount of ancestral king blood essence on his second brother. He would naturally not be stingy towards his brothers. He had also lent the Origin Magic Cube, so that the Rain Emperor could study it, hoping that his second brother could walk even further. What was causing Ling Han a headache was little terror. This was a war machine born by the heaven and earth of the foreign realm. But the little guy's strength had directly fallen down to Genesis tier after coming into the celestial realm because of the different heaven and earth and different regulations. "I'll think of something," Wally said. "As long as the model for regulations is modified, anyone could actually survive in any dimension." Who's this guy?" The large black dog ran over. He had shamelessly demanded a few bottles of ancestral king blood essence from Ling Han, not caring about the fact that it was actually already useless for him. "A guest from the dark inverse realm," Ling Han replied with a smile. Though the large black dog kept screwing others over, he was definitely trustworthy. The large black dog was curious and continuously sniffed around Wally. "I can't smell anything human." Wally was unwilling to show weakness and unleashed a green light scan on the large black dog. When the green light scan reached the spot between the large black dog's legs, the large black dog flew into a rage. "Pah!" He shot out a paw and sent Wally flying. "Pum!" His power was incredibly strong, and Wally was instantly shattered into pieces. How is he so fragile? The large black dog scratched his head, his eyes shifting around, looking guilty. Chapter 2376. The Large Black Dog versus Wally. Chapter 2376. The Large Black Dog versus Wally. Ling Han was also surprised. He knew that the large black dog had long since gained the strength of a celestial king, but in his eyes Wally had always been mysterious and unfathomable. To think that he would actually die with a single strike, this was completely unexpected to him. It was like there had been a person that kept bragging that he had been the top elite in this world, and everyone had believed him. Yet in the end, he had been pounded into mush by another. This gap was really too far. My condolences." The large black dog patted Ling Han's shoulder, looking as if this matter was completely unrelated to him. "You damn dog." Ling Han wanted to kick this guy, but the large black dog was the master of trickery, so how could he possibly allow Ling Han to successfully sneak an attack on him? He instantly dodged with a twist of his behind. Ling Han was just about to speak when he shockingly discovered that the bits and pieces that Wally had fallen apart into were actually wriggling and surging towards the same spot. This was a little like millions and millions of ants returning to their nest. Very soon, these broken pieces gathered together and began to fuse. A spherical shape first appeared, and then it sprouted arms, thighs, and neck at the same time. When the head also appeared, the hands and feet also formed, becoming a human figure. Wally had come back to life. Both Ling Han and the large black dog were extremely stunned. You have already been blasted into bits, and you can actually still come back to life? Moreover, there isn't even a scratch on you? Interesting. The large black dog raised his paws, looking like he wanted to play again. Wally's eyes glowed. Shio, he shot towards the large black dog. You don't look all that powerful, but your destructive power is extremely astonishing, the large black dog exclaimed. He waved a paw to block him, and actually a few hairs were burned off of him, exuding a faint charred smell. Ling Han knew that this should be Wally using void particle energy. Hence, even if his cultivation level was not all that high, his power was still extraordinary. Let Grandpa Dog see what you've got. The large black dog charged out. He did not use the great might of a celestial king, but rather suppressed his cultivation level to spar with Wally. Wally was aloof. He actually did not even ask why the large black dog wanted to attack him, and merely focused on evasion. Occasionally his eyes would glow red, condensing terrifyingly destructive lasers of light. The man and dog fought on and on. If the large black dog did not use Celestial King Tyr's power, he could do no harm to Wally at all. Instead, it would create a great problem for him. However, once the large black dog used Celestial King Tyr's power, Wally would not be able to bear it and would be very quickly smashed. But Wally would not bleed, so no matter how many pieces he was shattered into, there was no need to fear. They would very quickly piece themselves back together, and he would come back to life. Ling Han nodded internally. Wally had been created after the Dark Inverse Realm had expended the resources accumulated over several hundred epochs. If he could be easily killed by a celestial king, that would be too undeserving of the price paid to create him. All right. Let's all just sit down and have some tea, Ling Han said, smiling. After the large black dog destroyed Wally a good few times, he finally stopped and was even more curious about Wally now. If he, too, could possess this kind of recovery ability, he wouldn't have to fear even heavenly venerates in the future, would he? You have expended 30% of my energy, Wally said earnestly and looked at the large black dog for a while. Bad doggy. Pooh! Ling Han instantly spluttered. He could not imagine that Wally would suddenly pop out with this phrase after a long while of silence. Brother, how did you learn this move? Why don't you teach it to Grandpa Dog? The large black dog clapped a paw on Wally's shoulder, looking like they were close brothers. This was extremely shameless. Wally frowned. I am a supreme war soldier built using superstring material. I am more inclined toward support, calculation, and analysis. You are a pure living organism of the canine species. How could you possibly be my brother? The large black dog's expression instantly turned dark. No matter how he thought about it, the other's words were all insults. But Wally had spoken them so seriously that it was difficult for him to show his anger. But he soon showed an expression of shock and turned to say to Ling Han, What is this guy babbling about? Why doesn't Grandpa Dog understand? Ling Han laughed and replied, You were birthed by your parents, and as for him, he was created. Hence, if you want to learn this ability of his, you have to first commit suicide. Who knows? Maybe they can modify you into a war soldier. The large black dog quickly shook his head. Grandpa Dog is living so free and carefree and has absolutely no wish to die. Ling Han grinned. Damn dog. Do you want to become a heavenly venerate? The large black dog's eyes lit up. What? You have some way, brat? Is there some kind of supreme celestial fruit? Quick, give it to Grandpa Dog. Will I become a supreme being upon consuming it? Ling Han glared at him in irritation. Why don't you just ascend to the heavens while you're at it? Brat, are you insulting Grandpa Dog? The large black dog also responded with a glare. Ling Han scoffed and said, Do you want to learn or not? If not, then forget it. It's not that I have no one to teach. Brat, you really can help me? The large black dog was doubtful. It was much, much too hard to become a heavenly venerate. It was rare for even one to appear over several epochs. For example, after heavenly venerate Wu Li's emergence, over a dozen epochs have passed, and only the karmic life heavenly venerable had become a heavenly venerate. A mere ascending origin tier actually said that he had a way of becoming a heavenly venerate. How could a person, no, a dog believe that? Ling Han put on airs and grinned. If you don't believe me, then forget it. I believe you. The large black dog nodded hurriedly. Come, explain it to Grandpa Dog. Ling Han patted Wally's shoulder and said, Then it would be on his shoulders. N. The large black dog was very surprised, but thinking about how Wally clearly did not have a very high cultivation level, yet was still capable of harming his fur, and could recover even after being blasted to bits by a celestial king. How could it be if there was nothing amazing about that? He really was a character. Instantly he said shamelessly to Wally, Brother, let us talk closely. Wally released a green scan on the large black dog again, scanning him again. Why do you keep scanning me? The large black dog bared his teeth. If he did not believe that the other held the secret to becoming a heavenly venerate, he would definitely pounce and give him a few bites. To examine if you have rabies, Wally said seriously. Ha 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 ha. Ling Han laughed raucously. This Wally was no living creature, so how could he possibly get sick? Clearly, this was Wally trying to get revenge. Woof! The large black dog could not withhold himself any longer, and pounced, wanting to bite Wally, but Ling Han just managed to stop him. Thankfully, the large black dog, too, had his own judgment and wanted to get the method to become a heavenly venerate out of Wally. Thus, Ling Han managed to stop him very easily. Otherwise, if a ninth heaven celestial king truly raged, how could it be that Ling Han could manage to pull him back? Wally still explained the essence of the Genesis world again, and also took out his formulae and models, completely confusing the large black dog. The latter was completely lost and had absolutely no idea. This was natural. This was completely different from the Tao he cultivated. It was equivalent to having established a different cultivation system, but this was a study of the essence of heaven and earth, so it would not be considered heresy by the heaven and earth. But the large black dog was very cunning. He could see the benefits of this kind of model and formula through Ling Han. Thus, propping up his head, he had already begun to ponder long and hard over it. I want to become a heavenly venerate. From today onwards, I will begin my seclusion. If anyone dares to disturb me, I will pummel him to death, the large black dog declared. He dug a hole and buried himself in it. He really was going into seclusion. Ling Han snickered. Even if the large black dog was already a ninth heaven celestial king, it was a small matter to comprehend that model, but more importantly, he had never touched void particle energy and such before. So wanting to successfully convert the model into a cultivation technique was as difficult as ascending the heavens. This damn dog would eventually come to beg him. Chapter 2377, Ancestral Grounds of the Nine Snake Tribe. Chapter 2377, Ancestral Grounds of the Nine Snake Tribe. The large black dog had gone into seclusion, and the Rain Emperor had also begun his seclusion. They had glimpsed a brand new path of cultivation. Ling Han gave some guidance to Yan Xinlu and the others. These people were only monarch stars, with evolution index reaching only up to 9, while Ling Han was a supreme monarch star, whose evolution index was as high as 11. He had already completely surpassed them, and it could be claimed that they were on 2 completely different levels. Then he began to mull over his next move. In terms of cultivation resources, he had an abundance. Just ancestral king blood essence alone was something he had a great amount of. to say nothing of helping him attain the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Reaching great accomplishment levels should be no problem, at least. Then he asked the women where they would like to travel. After all, they had been away from the celestial realm for so many years. Let's visit father and mother-in-law. In the end, the women reached an agreement. Ling Han nodded. He, too, wished to see his parents and his son as well. However, Ling Jianxue had forgotten his parents now that he had his own wife, and who knew where he was enjoying life now. When children had grown up, it was up to themselves to walk their own paths. Ling Han decided to first see his parents, and then visit the Heavenly Saint Palace. That was also a place that had nurtured him. He also had to make a trip back to the Eastern Celestial Realm. His uncle, cousin, and other relatives were still there, as well as Little Stone, Azura Demon Emperor, and the other people or non-humans that had been the earliest to follow him. They set out, and they arrived where Ling Dongxing and his wife lived in seclusion after a 6-month-long journey. Seeing their son and daughters-in-law return, the old couple was very happy. But when they saw that there were no new grandsons or granddaughters, they couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Why was it that there was still no good news, even with so many wives? Yu Hongchang even deliberately pulled the women aside for some quiet words, discreetly asking if it was her son that had some kind of problem in that aspect, or was he being too aloof, and the women all flushed bright red at this. Ling Yuan and Cheng Zilong were also here. When she saw Ling Yuan naturally called out brother sweetly, while Cheng Zilong appeared very terrified. After all, Ling Han had previously left behind a powerful psychological trauma for him. Ling Han stayed for a good many days and gave his parents and sister a great many cultivation resources. He was also continuously cultivating every day, his cultivation level presently rising rapidly. From the second secret onwards, he had been cultivating the regulations of the foreign realm, and now he had to cultivate again right from the beginning, replenishing the regulations of the celestial realm, which helped him to again achieve a new understanding of regulations, especially when he was still standing at the height of the overlord of a realm. This understanding was naturally even more profound. With time acceleration effects, he already raised his cultivation level to the height of 11th secret in just a short 3 years. Now that he had reached this level, he had actually already returned to the ascending origin tier because a portion of his origin power had already been converted to source power, but he was in no rush to break through. He planned to settle himself and strengthen his foundations further. He planted the reincarnation tree. Since the Black Tower could no longer be used for a very long time, the reincarnation tree naturally had to be moved as well. By now, his need for the reincarnation tree was not too great. He had already cultivated a time celestial physique, and he himself could turn into the flow of time, which was more useful than anything else. According to his parents, Ling Jianxue had returned several hundred years ago, but had left quickly afterwards. When Ling Han knew his son was fine, he was assured. Furthermore, as long as he was in the celestial realm, he would have an instinctive feeling about the safety of his family. Hence, when it was the 4th year, Ling Han was already restless and decided to leave. Let's go and take a look at the ancestral grounds of the 9 Snake tribe first, the Empress suddenly said. Ling Han recalled how he had promised the Empress that they would go to the ancestral grounds of the 9 Snake tribe when they had been in the ancient realm. However, due to various incidents previously, this promise had never been fulfilled. Originally, the Empress wanted to return to her ancestral grounds primarily for the sake of completing her divine fetus. But now she had cultivated the greatest eternity, everlasting physique, which could be considered the strongest physique in this world. What else could be stronger than time itself? Hence, completing the physique of the 9 Snake tribe had become secondary, though having another physique would still be slightly beneficial. Returning was mainly a preoccupation for her, originating from the hope that had been passed through the generations to the Empress. All right, we will go to the ancestral grounds of the 9 Snake tribe first, then return to the Eastern Celestial Realm, Ling Han decided. The group set out, heading towards the ancestral grounds of the Nine-Snake tribe. Of course, there was a problem with this. They did not know where the ancestral grounds of the Nine-Snake tribe was. Thankfully, the bloodline that the Empress had inherited contained some memories about her ancestral grounds. When she extracted them and compared them to a map, they finally found the location of the ancestral grounds of the Nine-Snake tribe after a long period of study. It was in the scorching flames heaven, which was still considerably far from where they were. With the existence of transference portals, the journey was naturally no problem. They used transference portals one after another, saving countless amounts of time on the journey. About half a year later, they entered the scorching flames heaven. The ancestral grounds of the Nine-Snake tribe was in the western parts of the scorching flames heaven. There was a great sea there, and there was an island in this sea which was named Nine-Snake Island. They arrived at the coast, and Ling Han took out a large ship from his spatial god tool. Because of the Black Tower, he had also developed the habit of placing various items in his spatial god tool. The group braved the winds and the waves, and several days later, a massive island appeared ahead of them. It could be seen that this island originally should have had a massive mountain, but now it had been severed in the middle and was only about 3 kilometers tall, looking very abrupt. The Empress's beautiful eyes widened slightly. She had finally returned to her ancestral grounds, which made her feel slightly excited. Let's go! They disembarked and landed on the island. The ancestral grounds of the Nine-Snake tribe had already become ruins many, many years ago. That was because the ancestor of the 9 great ancestral flames had chosen to stand on the same side as the karmic life Heavenly Venerable all those years ago, and had suffered an attack from the forces that belonged to the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable. Drew Heavenly Venerate and green flames Heavenly Venerate as a result, leading to many deaths of this tribe as the rest fled. The Empress was feeling rueful. She had finally realized the long-cherished wish of her parents, grandparents, and countless of her elders, and arrived at the ancestral grounds of their tribe. She walked very slowly, touching gently every blade of grass, every tree, every stone, and every pillar of this place. Who goes there? To actually dare barge into the ancestral grounds of our Luan clan? An admonishment rang out, and a man suddenly shot down ahead of them. He looked to be in his 20s, dressed all in black and majestic in appearance. Everyone exchanged looks, all appearing slightly surprised. Wasn't the Nine-Snake tribe almost fully exterminated? Even if there were some fortunate people who had managed to escape that entered into the ancient realm, how could they appear here? It should be known that it was practically impossible to return to the celestial realm after entering into the ancient realm. In the past, just how many forbidden lands were there in the ancient realm that had been forces that had fled from the celestial realm? But after so many years, which one of them had managed to return to the celestial realm? Not even a single one. Your surname is Luan. Ling Han asked smilingly if the other was really a descendant of the Nine-Snake tribe. This was inevitably a piece of good news for the Empress. She had finally found family and was no longer alone. I am Luan Tianjun, this young man declared proudly, and then looked askance at Ling Han and his group, putting on a lofty stance. However, when his eyes passed over such exquisite beauties like the Empress, Hunyo and bewitching Maiden Ro, he couldn't help but look stunned. Just how many of you are there? Ling Han asked further, What are you asking this for? Luan Tianjuan's expression became alert, while also appearing slightly impatient. Just who was he? The Luan clan had the bloodline of a celestial king, noble and lofty in status. They could be considered the descendants of emperors. We're planning to visit family, Ling Han replied, smiling. Chapter 2378, Visiting Family. Chapter 2378, Visiting Family. Luan Tianjun immediately scoffed. How shameless! To actually want to develop relations with the descendants of a celestial king? Just how shameless was this? Just who do you think you are? He retorted disdainfully. Pah! The Empress moved, and delivered a slap right on Luan Tianjuan's face, which suddenly sent him flying. So what if they were family? If they actually dared disrespect Ling Han, she would pummel even her own siblings. Luan Tianjun got back to his feet, holding his cheek with his right hand and showing an expression of both fury and shame. Just who was he? He was the descendant of a celestial king, and someone actually dared to strike him? More importantly, the one who struck him was actually a woman at that, which was unacceptable to him, who was an extreme male chauvinist, and he was humiliated and infuriated to the extreme. "You! How dare you!" he shouted lowly as he sent out a signal for reinforcements. Ling Han smiled slightly and advised, "Young man, you should be less proud and humbler in the future. In this world, there are a great many people that are stronger than you, and you should always be respectful, or you will be dead before you even knew it." This was really a genuine piece of advice from him. The Nine Snake tribe had only had a celestial king before, and they were a target that was beaten down on at that. How many forces would feel wary about attacking them? If this brat still acted so arrogant when he ventured out, he would definitely lose his life the moment he encountered anyone with great strength or a powerful background. How could Luan Tianjun be willing to listen? He only knew that he had suffered an extraordinary humiliation. His eyes glared furiously at Ling Han, as if the one who had slapped him was not the Empress, but rather Ling Han. He did not immediately refute him, because he knew that he could not afford to mess around with this group of people. It was fine. HI's reinforcements would soon be arriving. As expected, only a while later, a loud whistle rang out, and a figure in black arrived in a flash. He was a young man in a tight-fitting black suit. He was extremely handsome, and it was clear that the Nine Snake tribe possessed very attractive looks. He was filled with heroic spirit, and it seemed like there was a great furnace inside his body, exuding a frightening aura. It was obvious he was still very young, but astonishingly he was already in the immortal palace tier. His talent was indeed extraordinary. This was also the reason for his soaring pride. He stood, arms crossed behind his back. It was only when he set eyes on the Empress who knew and bewitching maiden Ro that his eyes shone involuntarily, but he managed to hide it very well. He was still looking very arrogant. "Greetings," clansmen sang. Luan Tianjun hurriedly paid his respects, seeming extremely respectful, and making it seem like this was not a fellow clansman, but like he was a servant that was meeting his master. Luan Sang nodded proudly and then asked, "What is going on here?" "They barged into our forbidden land and even attacked me." Luan Tianjun quickly made his complaint. This Luan Sang was one of the strongest of the younger generation. Even outside, he would still be considered one of the elites, and it was definitely no issue for him to suppress Ling Han and his group. Luan Sang humphed, and only then surveyed Ling Han and his group, stating calmly, "I shall give you a chance to explain. Why have you barged into the forbidden land of our tribe?" If it was not because of the Empress and the others, he would definitely not be so amicable and would directly suppress them. Ling Han said to the Empress, "Your family do not seem very friendly." Then, turning his head, he said, "Is this a forbidden land? Why did we not see any plaque that said, 'This is a forbidden land, no trespassers allowed,' when we landed on the island?" "Humph, this is the ancestral grounds of our Nine Snake tribe. How could others be allowed to commit sacrilege here?" Luan Sang declared menacingly. His eyes burned with killing intent. Ling Han was the only man in his group, so he was displeased at this, no matter how he looked at it. Hence, he would find a reason to get rid of him. It is yours just because you say it is?" Ling Han retorted with a laugh. "You dare to insult our line, you are seeking death." Luan Sang moved aggressively, delivering a palm strike to Ling Han. Boom! A brilliant light filled the skies. He had cultivated his third mystery realm, and now these 3 mystery realms were glowing simultaneously, exploding with terrifying power. As his strike shot out, it turned into a primordial great beast. "Go!" Bewitching maiden Ro moved. She waved her slender hand, which looked like it was made from jade, but that primordial great beast was instantly shattered upon contact. It could not even withstand a single blow. Luan Sang couldn't help but feel greatly shocked. He had always had a very high opinion of himself, and thought, what other more outstanding prodigy could there be aside from himself in this world? But the flame of life burning in bewitching Maiden Ro looked like it had only been burning for several million years. How could she be stronger than him? When they were of the same cultivation level, he should be the strongest. Actually, bewitching Maiden Ro had still reserved some power, though she had not recovered the cultivation level that she should have had at the ascending origin tier. She had already returned to 5th secret immortal palace tier, and added with how she had refined some source power, she actually already possessed a portion of the might of the ascending origin tier. Luan Sang was not an 11th secret monarch star, either, but rather just a 3rd secret emperor tier. He was completely someone that the bewitching Maiden Ro could insta-kill. His heart was apprehensive, and he couldn't help but ask, "Just who exactly are you people?" "All right, no more jokes," Ling Han said, smiling. "This wife of mine also has the surname of Luan, and belongs to your line of the 9 Snake tribe. We initially planned to return to the ancestral grounds to pay our respects, but we did not expect that we would still be able to actually encounter her clansmen." This, Luan Sang looked towards the Empress and paused. "Since you belong to the bloodline of our 9 Snake tribe, you should possess the mystical power of our bloodline, correct?" Actually, the Empress could not even be bothered to recognize these clansmen of hers. With how proud she was, she thought she was ruler of the entire world. Aside from Ling Han, everyone else should bow down to worship her. However, Ling Han thought that she should still recognize them, so she reluctantly agreed. With a thought, her 9 doppelgangers appeared. Luan Sang was moved. The line of the 9 Snake tribe could form their own doppelgangers. This was a unique ability that belonged solely to them, but because of the purity of bloodline, some clansmen could manifest 5 or 6 doppelgangers, while others could only manifest 1 or 2. Someone who could manifest 9 like the Empress was indeed very, very rare. There were merely 2 that possessed this ability in the entire 9 Snake tribe now. "So we are a family." Luan Sang nodded, a smile appearing on his face. Come. Everyone, please follow me. The ancestor will definitely be extremely pleased." He made an inviting gesture, and then led the way in front of them. Ling Han smiled and followed his lead, with the Empress and the other women in tow. Meanwhile, Luan Tianjun was extremely depressed. The Empress had slapped him, which was a great humiliation in his eyes, but it looked like he would not be able to get his revenge for this. The Empress had 9 doppelgangers, and this was a proof of the purest bloodline of the 9 Snake tribe. The ancestor would definitely value this incredibly and treasure her highly. So how could he possibly get his chance for revenge? With Luan Sang leading the way, Ling Han and the others ascended the mountain. Actually, it only had the height of about 3 kilometers. Very soon, they arrived at the summit. This broken peak was unusually flat, and it could practically claim to be as smooth as a mirror. Perhaps an elite had cut it with a divine sword all those years ago, and that was why the broken peak appeared so smooth and even. Ling Han sent out a strike with a finger, testing the toughness of this rock. Wang, seals actually flashed on the mountain, though they were broken seals. Very quickly they dimmed again, but they still completely eliminated the force of Ling Han's strike. Luan Sang couldn't help but explain proudly, "This is the ancestral grounds of our 9 Snake tribe, and has been refined through a supreme secret technique by an ancestor many years ago. It is comparable to a celestial tool." Ling Han only responded with a smile, though he was shaking his head internally. It looked like the members of the Luan clan were still living in the remaining shadow of their ancestor. They kept talking about the 9 Snake tribe and how great their celestial king had been all those years ago, yet did not even think about how they had already lost the protection of a celestial king long ago. Where did they still get this feeling of superiority from? This mountain was indeed very tough, but it was only that. Otherwise, it would not have been cut in half in the past. Seeing the lack of concern in Ling Han's expression, Luan Sang couldn't help but humph internally as his animosity increased even further. Chapter 2379 Returning to the Family Line. Chapter 2379 Returning to the Family Line. The broken mountain had been reasonably made use of, with multiple palace halls built on it, making it seem very luxurious and magnificent. Ling Han shook his head internally. This broken mountain should be the source of humiliation for the Nine-Snake tribe, and should be eternally carved into their memories. Yet now there was a false facade of peace. Just what were these descendants thinking? It was like Luan Sang, Luan Tianjun, and the others did not remember at all how their celestial king ancestor had been killed, so they did not feel the slightest sense of shame, and only felt great pride due to being the descendant of a celestial king. There were really a considerable number of people here. When they saw how many there were in Ling Han's group, they all ran out to watch them as they proceeded. The attractiveness of this tribe was really very high. The men were all handsome and the women were beautiful, which was a pleasing sight to the eye. When someone asked about who Ling Han and his group were, Luan Sang offered a simple explanation. When they knew that such a supremely exquisite woman like the Empress was actually a member of their clan, the people around all looked proud, as if their only concern was external appearance, and all other matters like strength and cultivation level could be set aside for the moment. "Please wait a while," Luan Sang said as he turned to them after he led them to stand in front of a palace hall. Next, he walked into the palace hall. A while later, he walked out wearing a reserved smile. "Ancestor has summoned you." This declining tribe really had great airs. For the sake of the Empress, Ling Han did not show any temper, and merely responded with a slight smile. The Empress, on the other hand, showed a hint of displeasure, her expression slightly icy. They entered the palace hall. The inside was furnished very magnificently, with the furs of various immortal beasts covering the floor, while precious gems were embedded in the stone pillars, illuminating the entire great hall. They walked all the way to the other end of the great hall. There were various young people seated on either side, and they were all in deep focus, while chanting was presently reciting teachings, calming the heart and spirit and resonating with heavenly Tao. "Ancestor is teaching," Luan Sang said with slight reservedness, but the pride in his expression could not be concealed. "Ancestor is at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier. Furthermore, he is just a single step away from the celestial king tier. When the celestial path opens, Ancestor will definitely manage to become a celestial king. A celestial king with a lofty, noble status, which no one else could compare to." Ling Han really could not bear to see the sense of superiority these people had. He hadn't become a celestial king yet, right? So why were they so smug? "Come." Luan Sang led the way ahead, bringing them into the depths of the great hall. A man was seated in a lofty position there. He was an elder with a tall, lanky frame, dressed in white robes and exuding a sagely air. Seal after seal was spat from his mouth, turning into lotus flowers which fluttered around the surroundings and sank into the foreheads of the young people in the great hall, respectively. He was teaching by example. "Greetings, Ancestor." When Luan Sang had come close enough, he bowed down respectfully, a heated look in his eyes. This was the strongest elite of the Nine-Snake tribe, as well as their pillar, an existence that would definitely become a celestial king in the future. The white-robed elder's eyes opened, and his eyes passed over Ling Han and his group. When he spotted the Empress, his eyes shone brilliantly, and then he nodded. "Very good, very good. Another descendant with a pure bloodline has emerged from our bloodline. This is a sign that we are blessed by the heavens." Even as he spoke, the lotus flowers of great Tao that were coming from his mouth did not end. Multitasking was naturally no big deal for an ascending origin tier elite. Luan Sang turned his head and couldn't help but frown. He shouted, You actually do not kneel when meeting ancestor. However, the white-robed elder laughed and waved a hand dismissively. She has not returned to the line and acknowledged her ancestors yet. There's no need to rush things. As for the others, they were all outsiders. Even if they wanted to bow to him, they were not worthy. Child, what is your name? He asked again, very concerned about the Empress. The Empress scoffed. Just who do you think you are? I have to answer any question you ask. Luan Xing. Yet Ling Han smiled and answered on her behalf. He wanted to see just how arrogant this tribe had become, and exactly why would they have such an astonishing superiority complex. What is your cultivation level? The white-robed elder asked, slightly hesitant. With his insight as a consummate level ascending origin tier, he should be able to tell the Empress's cultivation level with a single look. Otherwise, it would mean that the latter's cultivation level was at the same level as his. He naturally could not believe this. The Empress's flame of life had only been burning for several million years, not even comparing to the scraps of his age. Immortal Palace tier, Ling Han answered simply. The white-robed elder's eyes involuntarily lit up. Possessing the purest bloodline of the Nine Snake tribe and attaining Immortal Palace tier when she was only several million years old? This kind of aptitude was truly amazing. He laughed loudly. Good, good, good. Good child. The elder began to talk, mainly about how he was going to gather the Nine Snake tribe again, raising himself to a very high position, which Ling Han mocked endlessly in his heart. From the look of things, the Empress's prideful character was really not unique, but rather a common ailment of this entire tribe. After talking for a long time, he finally commanded Luan Sang to bring the Empress and the others to rest, as he would hold a ceremony for the Empress to acknowledge her ancestors after selecting an auspicious day. Though the Empress was disdainful, she did not say anything. In the first place, she was a descendant of the Nine Snake tribe, so what need was there for her to return to the line and acknowledge her ancestors? Could it be that she would not be a member of the Nine Snake tribe without the ceremony? Moreover, she did not have any sense of association with these clansmen. Why was it she was the one required to acknowledge her ancestors? In the eyes of someone as proud as she was, it should be these people that should be acknowledging her instead. Ling Han merely wrapped an arm around her waist, subtly indicating the Empress to keep calm and not to be impatient. After all, these people were her family. He wanted the Empress to have her own family, though relatives like them could only be considered the most distant of relatives. With Luan Sang's arrangements, they were led into a palace hall and settled down there. A clanswoman who had 9 doppelgangers had returned, and one that had even reached the height of Immortal Palace tier at that. For the Nine Snake tribe, this was a serious matter. After all, they were no longer the Celestial King tier force they had once been. Even the strongest among them was only at the Ascending Origin tier, and there was only a single one at that. Hence, this ceremony would be greatly and elaborately conducted. Meanwhile, the Empress brought Ling Han and the others around. She was looking for the lost inheritance of this tribe so that she could complete her bloodline. Previously, she had absorbed the divine fetus of Gu Daoyi and had also obtained a portion of his memories, so she knew where he had obtained this inheritance from. Thus, she soon found an underground palace, but it was guarded, and others were forbidden from entering. At first, the Empress was going to flip out, but Ling Han persuaded her otherwise. After acknowledging her ancestors, the Empress naturally could enter this place, and there was no need to become hostile now. Of course, Ling Han was not afraid of the ancestor of the Nine Snake tribe. He only thought that these were the only family members left to the Empress. The Empress considered for a moment and let the matter go. She only went on a scenic tour with Ling Han and the others while cultivating the regulations of the celestial realm. Once it was time, she would be able to break through naturally and return to the Ascending Origin tier. Because the ceremony was going to be elaborately held, the Nine Snake tribe had also invited a great many guests. The island had become more and more lively throughout the last few days. The empress was exquisite beyond compare, which naturally attracted the eyes of countless. There were some young prodigies within the clan, as well as guests from outside the clan among them. However, this was the ancestral grounds of the Nine-Snake tribe, after all, and the empress was a rising star of the clan, so no one made any inappropriate actions. Another 10 days later, the ceremony for acknowledging ancestors was held officially. Everything was going smoothly, but just as the ceremony was drawing to a close, a young man suddenly leaped out and demanded with great displeasure, "Lord Guay, didn't you say that the person you betrothed to me is the most beautiful in your clan?" He paused and pointed at the empress. "Have you all gone blind? I want this one." Chapter 2380, Kong Clan. Chapter 2380, Kong Clan. When the young man jumped out, it was equivalent to having thrown a large rock into a peaceful pool of water, instantly causing a great commotion. Who is this brat? I can tell that he is only a severing mundane tier. So how can he act so arrogant? That's right. He actually dares to call himself a young master in front of the ancestor of the Nine-Snake tribe. He really is secure, knowing that he has backing. Where has he popped out from? Hush! Could it be that you guys do not know of the Kong clan? Hiss, the Kong clan of Three Cloud City. Che, aside from the Kong clan of the Three Cloud City, what other clan with the surname of Kong would dare call themselves the Kong clan? Kong clan is one of the well-known clans of a 4-star force. It is rumored that their ascending origin tier elites number in the hundreds. They have all emerged in the last few billion years, and are all waiting for the celestial path to open. And once they walked the celestial path, the Kong clan would have 5 celestial kings at least. Even a considerable number of great sects cannot compare to this, right? To have 5 celestial kings emerge at the same time. This is practically the stuff of fantasies. Could it be that this brat is a descendant of the Kong clan? His name is Kong Shuang, and he is also part of the main line of the Kong clan. It is said that for the sake of obtaining this betrothal, the Nine-Snake tribe not only approached them of their own volition, but also paid a great price for it. If it was me and I could become in-laws with the Kong clan, I would spare no expense either. No wonder this brat dares to be so arrogant. Still, to flip out in public like this, he is absolutely spoiled rotten. It can't be helped. Who asked him to be a son of the Kong clan? Everyone chattered back and forth. It was like they were telling a story as they gave a clear explanation of the origins of this young man. Ling Han gave an "oh." As it turned out, this Kong Shuang had a betrothal contact with the Nine-Snake tribe, but when he saw how the empress was more beautiful, he was immediately dissatisfied with his betrothed. Kong Shuang, where do you think this is? Do not spout nonsense. The ancestor of the Nine-Snake tribe exclaimed in displeasure. No matter how much he wanted to become in-laws with the Kong clan, there was no way he would allow a junior to point a finger at his nose and shout at him. Yet Kong Shuang was used to being spoiled, and did not have any fear at all. Raising his head high, he demanded, "I want this woman to be my wife." He looked at the empress, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. The empress flew into a thunderous rage, but had not flipped out yet when Ling Han held her back, leaning close to her ear, and said, "Let's just see how your family will deal with this matter." If the Nine-Snake tribe could fully defend the empress, he would also consider the Nine-Snake tribe his own family as well. With the ability of someone who was about to step into the level of a 5-star alchemist, it was really a small matter for him to help a clan prosper again. But if the Nine-Snake tribe would only push the empress out to resolve the matter, the Nine-Snake tribe would only be strangers to him. In fact, it was possible that he would erase them on a whim. The empress nodded, and because Ling Han was too close to her, his warm breath was felt on her neck, causing a faint flush to rise up on her jade-like complexion, and increasing her exquisiteness even more. Kong Shuang was naturally drooling even more, wanting nothing more than to immediately snatch the empress over. The ancestor of the Nine-Snake tribe released his aura, which suppressed Kong Shuang, and did not allow him to continue shouting so that the ceremony could be completed successfully. Kong Shuang left on the day itself. Ancestor, I will go and snipe him. In the great hall, someone asked for instructions from the ancestor. The ancestor of the nine-snake tribe thought for a short while and then nodded. Make it clean. Don't leave behind any clues. When this boy returned, he would definitely tell tales, and rather than allowing things to progress to the extent when the matter could not be easily resolved, it would be better to kill him directly. None of these people were the type to be generous and kind. Understood. This man left quietly, but not long after he returned and reported, Ancestor, I did not manage to catch up with Kong Shuang. He used a precious tool, which was astonishingly fast. The ancestor of the nine-snake tribe frowned. Has he discovered you? No, the person hurriedly replied. The ancestor of the nine-snake tribe nodded, his frown relaxing. It was fine as long as he was not discovered, or the matter would really become a huge mess. Counter-soldiers with arms and water with an earth were then. Now that the Empress had returned to the nine-snake tribe, she had naturally gained approval to enter into the underground palace hall. The ultimate inheritance of the nine-snake tribe lay there, and after maturity, every clan member had to stay there for a period of time so that they could advance their physique. Merely a day later, the Empress had come out, causing everyone in the nine-snake tribe to feel very disappointed. Because normally the stronger the bloodline, the longer she could stay in the underground palace, and only then would the physique she cultivated be stronger. But the Empress only stayed there for a single day, which was less than even the weakest person of their clan. Could it be that her 9 doppelgangers and the cultivation level of a mortal palace tier were all lies? These rumors immediately arose within the clan. It was truly hard to believe that she had actually come out after only a single day with the bloodline that could form 9 doppelgangers. It should be known that one of the 2 other clan members that had the bloodline of 9 doppelgangers stayed for 49 days, while the other stayed for 47 days. In comparison, the Empress was practically trash. The resolve of the ancestor of the nine-snake tribe wavered at this. Should they give up this member of their clan? If the Empress had incomparable aptitude, then for the sake of the future of the nine-snake tribe, he would definitely protect the Empress to his full efforts. But if the Empress was just an idiot, then the only use for her was as a bargaining chip to be offered in an alliance through marriage. And under such circumstances, someone came from the Kong clan. They put on great airs. 3 ascending origin tier elites led the group, and this was enough to raise the nine-snake tribe to the ground. The ancestor of the nine-snake tribe did not dare to be careless, and entertained the 3 of them in the great hall. Furthermore, the Empress had also been summoned. After all, she was an involved party. Ling Han accompanied her, while the other women stayed behind in their quarters. Only 4 people had come from the Kong clan, and the last member of the group was Kong clan. But the arrangement of having 3 great ascending origin tier elites in the group was very, very shocking. Brothers Kong, please. The ancestor of the nine-snake tribe raised his wine cup, offering a toast to the 3 ascending origin tier elites of the Kong clan. These 3 ascending origin tiers from the Kong clan were Kong En, Kong Lo, and Kong Yi. They were all at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier, so they were putting on a lot of airs. They were sure that once the celestial path was open, they would be able to become celestial kings. The trio raised their cups reservedly, but they only touched the rim of the cup at their lips slightly, and that was it. Brother Luan Gui, I have to say that you have not been very conscientious in this matter. Kong and was the first to raise difficult questions. Why do you say this? The ancestor of the nine-snake tribe asked smilingly. When you formed an alliance of marriage with our Kong clan, you said you would offer the most beautiful pearl of your clan. But according to Schwanger, that is not the case at all. Kong stated evenly, and then his eyes turned harsh as he glared at the ancestor of the nine-snake tribe. Are you playing around with our Kong clan? Immediately, a sense of displeasure rose up in the ancestor of the nine-snake tribe. For better or worse, he was also an ascending origin tier and was at the consummate level as well. He was just short of the celestial path to becoming a celestial king himself, of course. The majority of ascending origin tiers would ultimately die of old age at this level and would never be able to cross this threshold. However, the Kong clan had sent 3 consummate level ascending origin tiers, clearly meaning to intimidate him. A little impatience would spoil great plans, he thought, and then spoke. Lan Xing has only returned to our clan not too long ago, so it was not a deliberate deception on my part. Kong Xuang leaped out, pointed at the Empress, and called out, "That's all right, then. You can just marry her to me." Kong, En, and the others were all rubbing their beards and smiling, with absolutely no intentions of reprimanding him. Initially, this was absolutely not a situation in which a mere severing mundane tier would be allowed to interrupt. Yet they did not reprimand him. This was spoiling him too much. Ling Han stood up first and did not allow the Empress to flip out first. It was naturally the man that had to step out in this kind of situation. He strode over to Kong Xuang, a faint smile on his face. "You are quite brave that you dare to even think of my wife. Very soon, she will no longer be your wife," Kong Xuang declared disdainfully. "You will only be a dead man." Ling Han reached him and sent out a palm strike. Pa! And Kong Xuang was immediately turned into a mess of blood and flesh. Chapter 2381. Smacked to Death. Chapter 2381. Smacked to Death. This slap was too quick, to say nothing of the fact that Kong Xuang could not dodge in time at all. Even Kong, En, and the others did not manage to stop Ling Han in time, and could only watch helplessly as Kong Xuang was turned into a shower of blood. Blood sprayed and spurted on them, but their defensive power was automatically activated and blocked the blood spray, so none of it touched them. The 3 elites first felt disbelief, but it was quickly followed by thunderous fury as they also felt an indescribable embarrassment. With who they were and how strong they were, they actually allowed Ling Han to kill someone right in front of their eyes. How could they possibly tolerate that? Whoever you are, your only destined path is death. Kong En declared coldly, "You will be hung on the city gates of 3 Cloud City and suffer 1,000,000 years of torture." Kong Lu continued. The ancestor of the 9 Snake tribe hesitated slightly and then stood up as well. "Brothers Kong, this boy has nothing to do with our clan." He hurriedly drew a clear dividing line between Ling Han and their clan. "Hee, just because you say he has nothing to do with your clan, he truly is unrelated?" Kong Yi demanded menacingly. Usually it would only be the Kong clan that would be bullying others. When would it ever be someone else that was bullying them instead? Not only would Ling Han have to die, the Lan clan would also have to pay an enormous price, or everyone would think that the Kong clan was an easy target for bullies. The ancestor of the 9 Snake tribe had a grim expression. He had always had a high opinion of himself, as he was someone who possessed the bloodline of a celestial king. His strength would definitely be stronger than the usual ascending origin tiers. Hence, even in a battle of 1 against 3, he still had the confidence that he would not lose. But the Kong clan has practically been blessed by the heavens. The ascending origin tier elites in the clan actually numbered in the hundreds. If they were mobilized all at once, no matter how strong he would still only be able to bow down in submission. Hence, he presently hated Ling Han to death. Killing a severing mundane tier naturally was just a small matter, but the crux of the matter was just how much trouble would be incited after killing him. Lan Sang discerned his thoughts from his body language, and immediately jumped out, exclaiming, "Ling Han, you actually dare to commit a crime in the ancestral grounds of our 9 Snake tribe. Your sin deserves 10,000 deaths." He took the initiative to move, launching an attack on Ling Han. The ancestor of the 9 Snake tribe nodded secretly. This clan member was really clever. The former had indeed not doted on him for nothing. "Pa!" The Empress moved and sent out a palm strike. Instantly, Luan-Sang was turned into a shower of blood. She was presently an 11th secret monarch star, and had also developed some source power, so her battle prowess had attained the peak stage of small accomplishment level of the ascending origin tier, and was even slightly stronger than that. It was naturally just a small gesture for her to smack a 3rd secret emperor tier to death. Holy fuck! The ancestor of the 9-snake tribe gaped, soundlessly mouthing these words. Because he had not been able to discern the Empress's cultivation level. Added with how the Empress had only stayed in the underground palace for a day, he had gotten some ideas and thought that it was extremely possible that the Empress had lied about her cultivation level. But once the Empress made her move, it was world-shaking. The aura of her cultivation level was indeed only Immortal Palace tier, but the strength of her battle prowess had spiked all the way to the ascending origin tier. This was too terrifying. How could an Immortal Palace tier possibly possess ascending origin tier's battle prowess? He had been too closed off and had absolutely no idea that there were Emperor tiers and Monarch stars in this world. So he could not imagine how a mere Immortal Palace tier would actually be able to match ascending origin tier at all. If he had known early on how powerful the Empress was, he should have spared no expense to protect her. Fuck, with such outstanding talent, why had she stayed for only a day in the underground palace? He naturally could not possibly know that the Empress had cultivated a celestial physique of time. In the first place, this physique was supreme in the entire celestial realm. Additionally, she herself was also equivalent to the flow of time. In the eyes of others, it might only have been a single day, but in truth, she was the only one who could know just how many days had passed. Kong An's expression was icy. Why was this couple both so strange? They clearly were exuding an aura that was only at the Immortal Palace tier, yet had such astonishing battle prowess. You do indeed have some strength. No wonder you dared to commit an outrage. He sneered, his heart already calmed. He merely could not understand why they, being only in the Immortal Palace tier, could have ascending origin tier's battle prowess, but whether it was Ling Han or the Empress, the battle prowess they both exhibited was only small accomplishment level of the ascending origin tier. Compared to him, they were still very, very far off. What did he need to fear? Take them down! He moved aggressively, grabbing out at Ling Han, and Kong Le moved as well, launching an assault on the Empress. Ling Han smiled calmly, clenching his right hand into a fist. Without using any power of regulation, he just sent out a very ordinary, average punch. You are seeking death. Kong and smirked Cody. Without using the power of regulation, you dare to clash with me? You only have the battle prowess of small accomplishment level of the ascending origin tier. Even if you unleash all that completely, that is still far from being a match for me. What else could this be but seeking death? He did not want Ling Han to die so easily, so he reserved a portion of his power to avoid landing too strong a blow that would kill Ling Han immediately. On the other side, the Empress did not dare to face consummate level ascending origin tier battle prowess head-on. She turned into the flow of time. It seemed like she was in the present, but also in the past, and in a blur seemed to be the future, all at the same time. Aside from celestial kings that had grasped the essence of the regulations of time, who else could wound her? Pum! Liao Kong and exchanged a blow, and it was visibly Kong N's fist that exploded first, and then his arm exploded with flesh and blood, just like an umbrella that had been opened, revealing eerily white bone. Then the bone, too, shattered suddenly, and his whole arm was gone. Seeing this scene, everyone was gaping in shock, their scalps completely numb. This was too terrifying. This was a consummate level ascending origin tier, and his arm had actually been obliterated with a single punch. Could it be that their previous knowledge was all mistaken? It was the ascending origin tier that was actually the third rung on the ladder of the celestial path, and the Immortal Palace tier was actually superior. Seeing how Kong had been defeated with a single strike, Kong Le naturally was in no mood to attack the Empress further. In truth, he, too, could do nothing against her. The three members of the Kong clan all set their eyes on Ling Han, thinking that this young man was practically like a demon, and the ancestor of the Nine-Snake tribe was also trembling. He had only thought that he had mistakenly judged the Empress. He had not imagined that his biggest mistake was underestimating Ling Han. He had seriously underestimated him. Though he was confident that his strength was superior to that of Kong and the others, it was still absolutely impossible for him to pulverize one of Kong N's arms with a single punch. Even he was terrified by this kind of battle prowess. Ling Han smiled slightly. "Now that I have helped you teach a lesson to an unruly junior, are you really all so ungrateful? You have killed a junior of our clan, and actually want us to thank you for it." Kong, and the others were outraged, but faced with Ling Han's inconceivable strength, they could only swallow their anger and suffer the humiliation. "Sir, thank you for moving to help dispose of the dregs of our clan," Kong Yi forced out through gritted teeth, feeling like his heart was bleeding. This was an extraordinary humiliation. Ling Han nodded and said, "You guys would not be so shameless to ask that I move for free, right? You don't have to pay too much. Just give me a red packet one." The three members from the Kong clan wanted nothing more than to have a life and death struggle with Ling Han. He had gone too far. Not only had he killed a member of the Kong clan and wounded an elite of the Kong clan, he actually was asking them for a red packet now. What an intolerable bully. But that amazing strength of Ling Han was clear to see, intimidating them to the point that they could only keep to their best behavior. After a moment's discussion, they took out a spatial god tool, which they tossed over to Ling Han. Kong said, "Sir, can we take our leave now?" Ling Han asked lazily, Was there anyone that was stopping you?" The three of them glared hard at Ling Han. They would definitely return and get their vengeance. No matter how strong Ling Han was, he was only a single person, and the Kong clan had over 100 ascending origin tier elites. The majority of them were already at the consummate level of the ascending origin tier and had the potential to advance to the celestial king tier. With so many of them against him, how could he possibly not be suppressed? The three members of the Kong clan left in dejection, leaving behind the members of the Luan clan that were greatly stunned. "Let's go." Ling Han wrapped an arm gently around the Empress's waist. The Empress nodded without the slightest reluctance. For her, this clan only consisted of a great number of strangers. "Wait," the ancestor of the Nine-Snake tribe called out hurriedly.